Got quiet all of a sudden. We're trying to start a showbiz yet.
Yeah, we're ready for the roadshow.
Okay, call this a meeting to order. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. We're going to start the meeting by having a pledge of allegiance by Commissioner Donald Long.
Please join me. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The live broadcast of this meeting can be viewed at youtube.com/UtahDOT. And I think that the last time we had, what, 1,001? Thousands.
Several thousands.
Viewers.
It's all his relatives.
They're all voters. That's the important thing.
We're going to excuse Commissioner Megan Holbrook. She's at the state legislature this morning.
I believe she's watching us on
She's watching us. Good morning, Commissioner Megan Holbrook.
Part of thousands.
We also would like to excuse Commissioner Wayne Barlow. He and his truck are under weather as of this morning. We miss him. Before I start the introduction, I would like to share one thing with you guys. You've heard about the 7 wonders of the world. You can add one more. We had, I don't know how many inches of snow in southern Utah, specifically St. George. So we call it 8 wonders. And I just want to tell you this much, that you read about in the good books about the chariots of fires, then when people were in distress and then suddenly heavenly army showed up and rescued them. When we came to the milepost 32, thousands of truck drivers were on the roads, pulled over, and honestly in distress. And lo and behold, there was the chariots of fires from everywhere. I'm referring to snow plowers. They showed up. In a split second, everybody was on the road, including myself. Because at one point, my wife said, "Where's Carlos' number? I want to call and say that we're not coming." And I was just like, "It's too late, honey. We're on the road already. We will be helped." So thank you. On behalf of the Commission, all the citizens of Utah, all the visitors to the state of Utah, our love and appreciation and gratitude to go to all of you, the Udot family. Especially to region directors, to shed managers, and specifically to those snowplowers and drivers. What a wonderful asset we have. Thank you for putting your life in jeopardy to save ours. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Introduction. Let us go from my left. Commissioner Evans, would you please?
Yeah, Jim Evans, happy to be here this morning. Represent, of course, the whole state and in Region 3 and live in Orem. And just I'm learning something all the time. I have to tell the commissioners I spent a couple hours yesterday with the team down there trying to just teach me about the process coming up, and it's been really helpful. So I thank them for their extra time to work the lunch hour and train me. So thank you all who did that. So good to be here tonight.
Thank you. Luke Kramer, Commissioner at Large. I live in downtown Salt Lake, and I echo the Chairman's very strong praise for our wonderful team, the regional directors, the shed. It was so proud of UDOT in every way. Thank you, particularly this challenging and dangerous time of the year.
Danny McConkie, I'm a Commissioner at Large, live in St. George, where it's nice and sunny and warm.
In the snow.
Except when it's not.
Donna Law, I am a Commissioner at Large. My home is in Cedar City, which is Region 4. So I've been proud to watch all of the services that are extended down there because of this crazy storm. And I want to also give a nod to the communications team, which helped me know how to get here this morning. Which road had a big fire, which road has construction. So thanks for how you help the citizens of Utah get around.
And good morning, my name is Nagi Zinadi from snowy but warm St. George. And I represent the rest of the remaining of the state, that's the 14 counties. Carlos, would you please introduce your family?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
scary when you put it that way. I'm very proud of the work of the men and women in this department. I mean, a lot of our snowplow operators have been working 16-hour days, 7 days a week for weeks. And they're still about what they do, and you can see in their eyes they're a little tired. So I'm sure they would like to see a break as well. I'm Carlos Braceras, I'm the Executive Director of Udot.
I'm Terry Newell, Deputy Director.
Heather?
Heather Barthol, I'm Commissioner Assistant.
Grant?
Grant Potter, Communications Department. Zach Whitney, Udot Communications.
Lisa Wilson, Region 1.
Ryan Adams, Region 2.
Rick Fortune, Region 4.
Rob White, Operations Director. Ben Hewitt, Program Development.
Eric Rasband, Region 3.
Rob Clayton, Region 3.
Carlos Lowick, Region 2.
Bob Helms, Skip Coordinator.
Ivan Harrell, Financial Program.
Brad Palmer, Region 2.
Matt Parker, Region 3.
Diane Myers, Recorder Fund.
Charles Formont with Right Away.
Elizabeth Bay, Communications.
I think that's it.
I would like to also welcome and acknowledge our fellow partners, Alvin Guerrero and Brigitte Mendel. Welcome and good morning. Thank you. So let us see, right now we have a public comment section. At this time I would like to ask anyone who would like to come forward and take the microphone. Please introduce yourself, your position, and of course, to speak to the mic. Wow. Either we're doing such a good job of really inviting people. This is a free podium, no charge for the 10 minutes. After that, it will be $10 a minute. We'll go forward to next. Ivan, you're up.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I am happy to be here today to give you some news from the federal side. And I do want to echo the comments made about the plow operators. I've lived in several other states in my federal career, and it is amazing how great of a job they do here in cleaning those roads. I've been here for 5 years, and I only remember driving on snow maybe 3 times the whole time, so it's just amazing. So thank you all. I do have a presentation finally. After 5 years of speaking to the commission, I finally took the time to put a PowerPoint slide together. So let's see how let's see how it goes. I have a couple of things to bring to the attention of the commission. First of all, the Appropriations Act signed by the President on February 15th. Wanted to bring to your attention a couple of items that deal with transportation. First of all, it continued the Bill Grants program and the amount of $900 million. Again, this is money that's available for the states to submit requests for. And one of the things that it included was the requirement that grants be divided evenly between rural and urban projects. The appropriation also set the obligation limitation level at $445.3 million, which is the same level that the FAST Act required. That's excellent news because in the past we had been a little lower than that, so that the fact that we're at that level, it's good news for the transportation industry. There was also $3.25 billion transferred from the general fund to the highway trust fund. And these are 2 of the programs that are taking up most of that money. First of all is there's a subset of the Surface Transportation Block Grants program, so they've made available $2.7 billion for that, and that's money that can be used. So it's distributed by formula, and again, it's able to be used for roads, bridges, and tunnels under Title 23. And then the other one is a $475 million in dollars for a formula-based bridge replacement and rehabilitation program. This is new. It replaces the previous competitive bridge program. So unfortunately, Utah will not receive any of these funds because it's aimed at states where their bridges are in bad condition. you have to have 7.5% of your total deck area classified in poor condition, and yeah, I guess it's good news. Utah has done such a good job with their bridges that you don't need this extra money to help help you you know, address that problem. So again, kudos to Utah for maintaining their bridge in such good condition. There was an executive order issued by the President on the 31st of January. It is called the Strengthening Buy American Preferences for Infrastructure Projects, and basically it encourages the federal agencies to get states to incorporate more domestic products into their contracts. So it uses the word encourage. We still, this is fairly new, we still have 90 days as a Federal Highways or the other agencies to respond to the executive order and come up with how we're going to address it. So things are still all kind of up in the air right now, but we're looking at it and trying to figure out the best way to implement this executive order. It does expand or encourage us to expand beyond steel and iron into aluminum, cement, and other manufactured products. And if you read the definition of manufactured products, it talks about non-ferrous metals, aluminum, plastic, polymer-based products, and polyvinyl chloride pipe, glass, even lumber. So it's a big change for us, but again, the executive orders does use the word encourage. Now it doesn't mandate it. So, but once we as an agency have time, we'll come up with some guidance on how to comply with the executive order. This is something that should be of interest here for Utah. You know, normally federal requirements are that our contracts be competitively bid and awarded. But we do have a program called SCP-14. It's called the Special Experimental Projects, which allow us to experiment with other contracting methods. So in the past, you know, design build, CMGC, lane rentals were all experimental. And then over time, we were able to feel confident with those contracting methods and then move into as acceptable or allowable under the federal program. So this one, the indefinite delivery, indefinite quality, now is one that has moved over to the allowable under certain conditions. So we came up with a notice on January 18th notifying states that they are now able to use indefinite delivery and indefinite quality contracting on federal aid contracts, as long as they meet those conditions, which is, you know, it's got to be a short-term contract, you know, less 1 to 2 years, be competitively bid and awarded, and you know, not to exceed $2 million average over the term of the contract and per year, and a maximum not to exceed 5 years. So as long as it meets those conditions, they can be used outside of the SCP-14 program. And I understand that here in Utah we do use IDIQ for under SCP-14, but now they're able to continue that, but not under SCP-14. We are, as a department, reviewing our guidance. We have gone out with a notice to the public, letting them know that we're in that process and asking for comments on any guidance or regulation that they feel should be repealed, replaced, or modified. So this is kind of a summary of that. So by April 8th, if anybody, any state agency, any person, any public person has any ideas on any kind of guidance or regulation that should be modified, replaced, or repealed, we are looking for those comments or those suggestions. And I think this is my last one, the Surface Transportation System Funding Alternatives Grant. We issued those grants in February 2nd, and I'm happy to report that Udot received one grant and then was part of a group that received another grant. These grants are intended to be used for to explore alternative funding methods for transportation in addition to the gas tax. So 1.25 million will be used for the road usage charge program that's going on here in Utah. And then 950 million will be used for, no, 950,000 will be used for the, it's been granted to the, that group of western states that are also exploring road user charge. So again, pretty good news on that. I'm sure Terry's very happy to have all of that cash on hand now. And that's all I had. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mike?
Right.
Getting good at PowerPoint.
I know, look at that. I was
Well
able to do it all. Thank you, Heather, for all your help with that.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Very nice. Okay, under item number 4, Udot scoreboard, we will hear from Carlos first on the strategic direction, and then Chris Peterson, Rob White will follow him.
I'll be very quick with this. The commission has seen this before. Again, Carlos Braceras with Udot. The commission has seen this before, but we've reformatted it, so I wanted to make you aware of it. If you go to the Udot homepage, udot.utah.gov, on the left side, there's a little button, strategic direction. You can get into this from that location. There's a lot of information in here. And so these strategic goals that we have in the strategic direction are in statute. The legislature directs that our activities, the projects we program, are moving us in a positive direction to achieve the targets that have been identified in this strategic direction. And so that's why we like to report to the commission on how we're doing on this. Just a little bit on, high-level picture on our vision, mission, and the values that are important to us as an organization. A little bit of information. And so what you'll see here is this section on the left here where you see connected autonomous vehicles, unmanned aerial vehicles, legislative update. That's going to be a dynamic section where we'll be kind of keeping things that might be hot or of interest for the public or for elected officials to be able to get in and get a little bit more background on things. We did have a lot of new legislators this session. And so this is the tool we use with the new legislators. And one of the things is, like the factoids on the right, we like to go through and show them, we have regions, and we talk about the different region directors. We talk about a little bit of our assets that we have out there. I'll point out that from an asset value, $43 billion asset value. Now that is by far and away mostly pavements, concrete and asphalt. Bridges make up the second largest asset that we all manage together. And we talked about the snow plows that are out there. People like to see that. This is an interesting one. We talk about innovations that have been implemented, and this actually goes back to 1997. In 1997, the legislature created the Centennial Highway Fund. And as part of the Centennial Highway Fund, that was really the first time general fund was dedicated to transportation. And there was also the decision that we would do some bonding on that. And right near the end of the discussions and negotiations between Governor Leavitt and the legislature, there was the comment made that the department needed to have some skin in the game. And so we were directed to every year find $6 million of efficiencies and to move that money out of our operations budget and move it into projects for the commission to program. And we had a report to executive appropriations every year. You can go in here, you can see those efficiency reports going back many, many years, and there's a lot of really interesting things that our team has just taken on, implemented, and have made us better and more efficient. We did get that adjusted in statute years ago. It wasn't possible to every year be squeezing this additional $6 million out of our budget. So you have to go back to the mid-2000s when really the last time that active transfer took place of the $6 million. But some really cool stuff take place in that innovation area. And if you can navigate this by clicking on these different things on the left. So kind of about us, and then we talk about the strategic goals. And these are the 3 strategic goals that you've seen. And again, we'll spend a little bit more time with this when we get into the commission workshop. I just wanted you to be available to understand where you could get to it, and you can drill into these goals and see the different strategies that we have in here. So like on zero fatalities, that index is made up of these 6 different strategies. So Udot equipment damage, fatalities, Udot injuries, Udot fatalities, and so you can see the measures that are used to make up this historical trend. So this trend is a composite. And we set a goal every year of being able to, like on each one of these strategies, a 2.5% improvement. So for fatalities, every year we set a target that we're going to reduce fatalities by 2.5%, based on the last 3 years, so it's a rolling average going back 3 years, and that's how we set those targets for the next year. And so I'm not going to go into you can drill into these and go very deep and see how we're doing with the money that the legislature's allocated to us and how we're doing with the money that the commission has allocated to the department to implement. And so I just wanted to make you aware of this section in here. So this is really what drives the activities of the department. Every employee's performance plan ties in some way back to these 3 strategic goals and the strategies that are contained within them. And that helps align the efforts of the organization. This is an area that has been very useful and it's been very informative for legislators. So when you start to think about our transportation budget and what it's made up of, you can see we have various funds here. So there's 5 different funds. The first 3 across the top are by far and away the most significant funds. The other 2 are very small. But this is what the legislature appropriates within each one of these funds. They appropriate them to different line items. And I'll just point out real quick kind of where the commission's role comes into play. So the first one that we have highlighted here is the Transportation Investment Fund. That's the sales tax. So if you want to know the revenues that make up that sales tax, you can look down here on the right side. So the sales tax is 17%, 3.68, and there's a story behind all of these. These bottom 2 sales tax, the 1/16 and the 0.05, they're transitioning away. So there was a Senate Bill 80 about 4 years ago, and it's taking part of that sales tax over a 10-year period, so it doesn't have really much of a negative impact on our projects. And it's putting money into a water fund, and it's also returning a portion of that money to the general fund for the legislature to allocate to other priorities. So where we're going to end up eventually is just these 2 sales tax pieces, the 17 and the 3.68. So 20.68% of the statewide sales tax will be coming to the commission to allocate to projects that meet the rule and criteria that you've established for the Transportation Investment Fund. And so you could look at the percentages in here. As we go over here, you click on expenditures. I'll see how now I'm on the top right here. And you can see that 57% of the revenues off the Transportation Investment Fund are allocated. That's cash flow. That's money that the commission allocates to projects. And 43% of that is tied up in paying debt. You can see the projects that we have listed here that you have programmed for the Transportation Investment Fund. I'll show you a place where it's much easier to get to project information. So as you look at this, that's the Transportation Investment Fund, and that's all money. There's no people funded through this fund. This is all money that the commission programs to projects. In the Transportation Fund, if you think state gas tax vehicle registration, that's really what this is made up of. You can see on the right side that state gas tax makes up 84% of the Transportation Fund, and vehicle registrations makes up a portion of that. It's broken down a little more here on the right. Special fuel, that's diesel. Give you an idea of what that is. And these fees down here basically pertain to our motor carrier program. You can see the number, the 609. This is the amount that the B&C calculation is made on. So B, county roads, C, city roads. The legislature has come up with I'll say, a very complex formula for us to distribute the B&C money to the cities and counties. So 30% of this portion is distributed out to the cities and counties. And you can see that if you look at the expenditures side of here. And this is a little small, I apologize for that. But this is the way that this is now legislative action. So I'm on this left circle over here, and the legislature allocates the money to these different line items within the Transportation Fund. So here's the 30% of the B&C fund on the left. A portion of this money is transferred to the Transportation Investment Fund. That goes back since we created the Centennial Highway Fund as to why that's there. If you're wondering how we pay for the men and women and all the salt and all the trucks that are out there and filling potholes and doing signs for Commissioner Kramer, that's our operations and equipment line item right here. The construction management, now this is, I was sitting down with co-chair of Executive Appropriations yesterday, Brad Last, and we're going through this, and I said, well, this construction management line item, this has no people in it. This is the line item that the commission programs to projects. And he says, why is it called construction management? I said, that's a really good question, because this goes back a long time. back when our organization was split with maintenance employees, and we had a maintenance budget and a construction budget, and we had people that did just construction oversight. What we've done as part of those efficiency efforts that I talked about earlier, we combined our maintenance and construction employees. So now we have trans-techs, is what that program's called, and we have folks that are trained to operate equipment, trained to push snow, they have commercial driver's license, but they're also trained to do construction inspection and material testing on construction projects. So we move them back and forth. And so you could show up at a maintenance station in the summertime and you probably won't find anyone there because they're out on construction jobs. And so that construction management name goes back to the fact when we used to have people in that thing. But that's where you program money out of. And so during the workshop, when we work over the next couple of months, that's another pot of money that you program money from. You can see the amount that goes to B and C over here, the $182 million that goes and is distributed. We have some money that we distribute to other state agencies of almost $12 million, and you can see those state agencies over here. So Public Safety, Division of Finance, Tax Commission, and Tourism get a small amount of the Transportation Fund. And all that's done, those transfers are done through statute. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
These percentages, they are written in stone, can be changed, can be adjusted, depends on season.
Good question. You can't change them. This is what the legislature does. The percentages like B and C, that's been there since about the mid-2000s. It used to be 25%, but one of those sales tax portions that I showed you over in the Transportation Investment Fund, there was an exchange on that. They viewed that as at greater risk. They were right. We're going to lose it. But that percentage changed back at that time frame. This is all done through the appropriations process of the legislature, establishing these percentages. Now, what the commission does do, so this portion here, this construction line item where it shows the 22%, you now take that and you establish these percentages over here. And so you allocate the money to these different programs. You can see them quantified here on the right side. But these are the different programs that you put money to, and then the regions come back and recommend projects within those programs. Does that make sense, Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Okay. And so that's the Transportation Fund. That has some state constitutional protections of that money only being allowed to be used on state roads. And so this is what we fund. This is really the funding of the department. All of our employees, every activity we do is funded out of the Transportation Fund. When the interstate highway system was really created, the partnership between the federal government and the states was really a good model. And they agreed to, on a cost-to-complete concept, to finish the interstates, but the states had to agree to operate and maintain those interstates moving forward. And so we meet that commitment here with the Transportation Fund. And this is also the area that we provide, I'll show you here, state match for federal program and federal eligible programs, the $23 million. This is when we do the workshop, we make that recommendation. We think this is a really important recommendation to do it right up front, because this is what allows us to access this 22% of our budget, which is the federal highway funds. So when you go up and buy some gas, a gallon of gas, 18.4 cents is federal gas tax, 30 cents is state gas tax, diesel 24 cents on the federal side. So our gas and diesel are both at the same level at the state. But this federal money, we send this to Washington, and then they send it back. You heard Ivan use the term formula funds. They use formulas to distribute that money to the states. As states, we like the formula program. It gives us some assurity in terms of how much money the state's going to receive. If you look at the transit programs between UTA and the other transit providers in the state and what we receive here, we're essentially a break-even state. So what we send back to Washington, we essentially get back to be able to spend. Now it comes back in different categories. And so here's the federal funds. 20% of it is passed through to the MPOs, Metropolitan Planning Organizations. So we have 4 MPOs in the state. Wasatch Front's the biggest. MAG down in Utah County, Dixie down south, and in snowy St. George, and Cache up in Cache Valley. So that's passed through to them, and the locals provide the match against that portion of the federal funds. So you can see here our portion of the federal funds here.
So MPOs get equal amounts?
No. So you can see here, the local and pass-through, the MPOs total throughout the state gets set. This is last year's appropriations, okay? So it'll be updated. Becky will show you the update when we get down there in March. This will be one of her scrambles because we finished session and then she's going to be trying to update this before we sit down for workshop. But we passed through, and again, this is by formula that from the federal government has come up. We passed through $76.1 million to the 4 different MPOs. The larger MPOs get more money. And then as a state, we have 299, and if you throw the match in there, our federal program's $322 million. Now, we have a point in the law. This is kind of a moving target. We never quite know what we're going to get. We think we know. We have an authorizing bill. We have to have year appropriations, and then there's always some changes. And so we have the ability to spend what we get, and then the legislature makes adjustments next year. But we also have the responsibility to not spend what we don't get. There's really no other state agency that has that. If they get appropriated a budget, they can spend that money. And it's really up to the legislature to figure out, if there's less revenue coming in, how do I fill that hole? We don't have that luxury. So we have to manage that. And this is something Becky Bradshaw in our comptroller's office does on a daily basis, is watching at our balance every day, watching those revenues coming in, watching how fast our regions and our folks are spending the money. And it's, in the summertime when we're spending out $3 million a calendar day, there's a lot of activity in that area. So this is our federal program, and this is the way you have decided to allocate that money out to the federal projects. So these are the different programs you funded. And some of the funding is, you don't have full discretion on what categories they go in. When the money comes back to us from USDOT, Congress has dictated that most of it goes into these different categories. And those categories define what type of road we can use, as well as what type of project we can do with that money. So there's a little more restrictions with the federal money. So at times when you've been approached by local governments and asked to do a federal state exchange, that exchange helps them have more flexibility in delivering the project the way they want to deliver it, and maybe doing things that they could maybe not have been eligible under the federal program. And then real quick, I'll just point out, we have a small rural transit program that you guys approve every year, federally funded, and we have an aeronautics program. If you look at the aeronautics program, this is small. These are small numbers. Say about $7.5 million. That's mostly money coming in between aeronautic registration fees, and we have the responsibility to go out and verify airplane registration. So if they're used here, I can't remember the percentage of time, but I think it's more than 50% of the year. If they're housed in the state of Utah, they have to pay registration in the state of Utah. And we have a staff member that goes out and verifies that. And then aviation fuel makes up the bulk of this. And most of this is not aviation fuel sold at Salt Lake International. This is sold throughout the 46 local airports we have around the state. The state owns one airport at Halls Crossing. So members of the commission, I'm not sure if any of you were with the commission when we, Danny, I'm trying to remember when we were in Monticello and we used the plane to fly back and forth to go look at the ferry. Remember when we went through the drama on the ferry? So we wanted to take the commissioners down on that. So that's our funding picture. I think that's a helpful tool to help put your mind around the different funds and the sandbox that the commissioners have to work in. Our budget last year was $1.7 billion. If everything stays the same, it's going to go down because we used to have the responsibility to allocate the mineral lease program. So we were a pass-through agency. We had nothing to do with the mineral lease program, and we used to have that responsibility. We suggested that the Division of Finance would be much better suited for this, and we ran a bill and changed that. So if everything goes the same, our total budget number will go down, but it won't have any impact on any projects that we do or our operations. So this piece here, we call this the program briefing. And so this is an area where you can get into, this is an interactive map. And so if you like working in GIS, you can start to see all of the TIF projects that the commission has programmed. You can click on those projects, and I happen to practice here, so what's this one? That's I-15 Shepherd Lane Interchange. So you can see the project, the funding amount, and then the link to the project fact sheet. All right. I clicked on 4 projects yesterday with Representative Last, and none of them worked.
Give us more money.
I want to thank Nathan Lee for jumping on that and fixing that. So Nathan made that happen. So a little bit of overview on the project, so you can get an idea of the scope, the schedule, what we're working on, the anticipated construction schedule, and kind of what it would look like. And we have these fact sheets for most of the projects in the Transportation Investment Fund that I think are pretty useful. When we get later in the meeting, during Terry's piece, she's going to talk a little bit about this piece here, right, Terry?
Yes.
And we wanted to show you a combination of those projects that are unfunded, that have been identified through a combination high score through your ranking process, or a lot of public input, a lot of we want this project type of thing. So we wanted to start to put that in front of you, and Terry will talk about that when we get to that. So that's the transportation and TIF. You can see GIS map, and then if you really want to have some fun, and this is fun, is you can get down and start to look at internal performance measures. So, you know, our strategic goals are measuring outcomes. Those are outcome measures that impact the public. Those are things that when the public says, this is what I want my transportation dollars to do, things they care about. These are things that we use to help manage how effective we are as an organization and to help make different decisions. So we call these our tactical measures, and these are the measures we work on and talk about and try to understand what they're telling us and see what improvements we can make. And you guys even have a section here too, and we're measuring you guys. But Mr. Chairman, that concludes what I wanted to talk about. If there's any questions on this.
Any questions for Carlos? It was very informative. Thank you.
And if there's any other information you'd like to see provided on that, we would love to make that available as well. So.
Carlos, this may not be a related question, but out of the carpool that vehicles that drive on our highway system, what percentage of them are not contributing to the gas tax? I mean, propane, electric, all that kind of
It's
stuff.
a pretty small percentage right now.
But we've identified that?
We know that.
Okay.
And because we're looking at it, you know, if you remember, the department was given the ambitious goal of implementing a road usage charge program. So January 1 of next year, we have to have a voluntary road usage program going. So we needed to understand what the population of potential folks that would participate in the program is, and the grant that Ivan mentioned for road usage charge. One of the concerns is to be able to get a program like this up and going, we're really going from a point of sale, point of collections on the gas tax of about 26 points that we collect gas tax from. So we collect it from what's referred to as the rack. And we're going to be going to a point of collection from potentially millions of vehicles. So we see initially the program is going to cost us money. This grant is going to go a long way to help us get the program up and running and not have a negative impact on us. So it wasn't a direct answer to your question, but I've been spending a lot of time at the Capitol, so you can see me dance.
I can testify to that.
I just compliment you again. What a precise and understandable way of looking at it. Well done. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Even I can understand that short time. That's simple.
Commissioners, thank you this morning for the opportunity to address you. Chris Peterson, the Director of Project Development. I'm still getting used to that, letting that come off my tongue. As Carlos pointed out, we're going to talk a little bit about dashboards, right? And this is where he said we get really excited. I think he needs to be careful with the word "we" sometimes, but because he's excited, we get excited. As I mentioned last month, we're looking into some changes. We've made some small changes to this presentation, hopefully to make it just a little bit cleaner for you to understand the status of our delivery of our projects. So on this first line, I'll show you, you'll notice that, I got to make sure that I can get, there we go. Okay, I need to reload this, because this is not. We updated it last night, just like they were fixing Carlos's sheets, we updated it last night. So I got to make sure I come in, because it's supposed to have changed.
Uh-oh.
That's because...
Does not exist.
This story does not exist.
I'll use
I'll use this one. So the challenge is, I know exactly why it's doing that. I need to log in with my login to get that page to work, so we'll address that for next month. So we did make a few little changes to try and make this just a little bit more self-explanatory. So anyway, we have, as we presented last week, 7 projects. That's the same number that were past due, and we still have 17 projects that are going to advertise within 60 days, and 245 more than 60 days out. In the future, I'm not going to report the projects with no committed advertised date. We're going to report to you all of the rest of the projects that you've approved. Many of those do not advertise. They will be delivered through studies or through other methods of delivery, and they don't. And so this is just a little confusing on how that is. So, but you do have about 580 projects that you've approved. Of those that advertise, 91% of those have been delivered on time as we have planned and as we have committed to you that we would do. Our goal is 85%, so we're pleased that we're exceeding that goal. This is a listing, let's bring this down, of all the projects that we've advertised in the last month. If you'll notice, this is a long list. It's a little longer than what you've seen in the last few months, and our folks have been extremely busy getting our projects out to bid and awarded. We would love to, Brian wanted to make sure that I pointed out to you that last night we opened up the bids for the I-15 northbound project. We were pleased that we have now selected an apparent best value winner of that contract last night is Ames Construction. I can make that announcement to you. We had a team working on evaluating those proposals over the last 2 weeks. They've been working really hard, isolated and secluded so that they could spend time dedicating some time to make sure that we review those proposals correctly. So shortly we will be awarding that contract to Ames Construction, and we'll turn that to Brian and his project manager, and they'll start delivering that. It'll be exciting, right? Next 2 years, they'll be exciting to see. Our advertising status, this is reflected in the 85% goal and the 91% success rate that we're seeing in delivering our projects on time. We've changed the colors on this chart. Yellow means that it was late, but it's been delivered. Red means it still hasn't been delivered yet, and so that's why we made it red to kind of tell you that's the 7, okay? And the blue projects are still projects that are out there. Those are some of the 60 that are, or the projects that are out there within 60 days. They're in scoping, and they'll be delivered here shortly, as you can see. So we still have a couple projects here in February. We're getting down right to the very end, and so, but we're still planning to be on schedule and on time with those projects. This is, we're pretty excited. You can see that we're starting to award several more contracts. Right now, as of February, we have 145 contracts that we have signed and underway with contractors. If you see this on our remaining amount, we have paid out of those 145, 608 million. We still have 830 million remaining to pay on those 145 contracts. So there's a lot of work going on. When Carlos mentioned that here in the summer we'll be paying $3 million a day out to our contractors, that's how that math works out. That's a lot of money. Our contractor payments, this is how much we pay by month, and if you remember, Carlos said, you know, when we're up here in around July and August, this is the $3 million a day. Right now is a fairly slow time. We're not making significant payments to contractors. There's not a significant amount of work on too many projects. There are a few that are still working, and so you can see that reflected in the amount of money that we paid our contractors. We're going to skip this one. If I'd have been able to get the other slide, the other page to work without a password, this would have been gone. So I'm not going to talk about that one. And then this is a representation of the projects that we have awarded to contractors and how that reflects compared to how our engineers' estimates or how our engineers predicted those projects should cost compared to what the contracts actually came in at. And so you can see that we are doing a very good job matching and estimating how much our projects should cost compared to what the industry is telling us. Do you have any questions? about this today? Commissioner Kramer.
Chris, do you keep track of how many contractors are Utah-based that we award to versus non-Utah-based? Just curious, it's kind of a political question.
We do not track it, but we know it. Is that so?
Sure.
So there is, well, you asked me a political question, so I'm going to give you a political answer. Is that fair?
It is.
All right. So we do know where each of our contractors are based and where their home offices are as compared to where their local offices are.
Yeah.
We don't track it because to us and in state law it doesn't matter where they're from. It's whether or not they're qualified to perform the work.
Right.
But we do know where they are, where they're from, and if you were to ask us, we could tell you that if you wanted to know, and if you wanted to know what percentage, we could easily compile it, but I don't have that on the dashboard.
Do most of them create a local office to, in fact, take care of the contractor's responsibilities?
Yes, the majority of them have offices here in the state. Occasionally you'll get a contractor coming from out of state. They will establish an office here. In order to work. They have to have a contractor's license and a business license in the state of Utah.
Sure, and they're partnered with the local or whatever. Well, congratulations. That's a lot of money going out for some great work.
Yes. I do want to give you an update really quick. We are having, I don't know if you're aware, and I had to step out during introductions to talk with a representative from Union Pacific. Union Pacific right now is going through some significant restructuring.
Yeah.
They've had some significant layoffs and they're changing their business model. And in doing so, that has created some complications for us and in our interactions with them. We are not seeing the typical timely response back from them on things that we need to get reviewed and approved by them for projects that cross their tracks. Over the next several years, we'll have about 40 projects that require their interaction. We have some projects like last month you approved some changes for the Ped Ridge over at UVU that goes over Union Pacific's tracks. We also have interactions, a project right now, I-15 southbound, that is making significant changes to a bridge that carries UP, as well as some others of our bridges that go over the top of UP. We are anticipating delays on many of those projects because of the slow interactions with Union Pacific. We want to let you know that. We're working with them. We're doing our best. They're trying, but because of the restructure, it's made it difficult for them, and because of the downsizing, all of our information now gets funneled to one or two people, where it used to get funneled to lots of different places, and that is the same. We're not different than any other state in the West, and that's one thing that UP said to me this morning was, Chris, we understand, we're trying, and we recognize there's challenges, and we're going to do our best. But I said, that's great, we appreciate that. We don't want to blindside you if we have to ask for additional money on a project, and we say that it was Union Pacific that hasn't been timely. We want to make sure you know that, because we want to be a partner rather than the opposite of that. So we want to let you know that that's going on. Out of those 40 projects, we have some that we're spending money today because of those delays, and we have some projects that we expect will be delayed a year or two. We're not at that point yet on the UVU Ped Bridge. We may be here shortly if we can't get some permits from them that we need to have so we can do work near their tracks. So that's just kind of a heads up. We want to let you know that so we don't surprise you if we have to come back to you and ask for additional funds in the future.
I have a question, maybe you or Carlos. For some of the new commissioners, what is the method of selecting those contractors? Can we get some kind of brief explanation? Or
Chris, you want to do that?
Which contractors did you
Not
use?
Ames, are you selecting?
Ames. So we use, that contract is a design-build contract, and we use what we call a best value selection. So as we put together an RFP, we solicit bids from contractors that carry both a technical and a price component. And so we use a very complicated process to make sure that we blind the reviews of those technical portions, and we don't select a contractor based solely on price. And so we set together a team of, Brian, how big was the team? It was about 15 people or more, 20 people, where we take them and we ask them to isolate themselves away from their normal job for a couple weeks and review proposals. And they rate those proposals based on the technical match to our RFP and how well they understood our RFP, understand the project, and how well they plan and propose to build the project. So we rate that and give them a technical score. And we also, so once we have that score, we evaluate that and what kind of value that would bring. We marry that up later with our price proposal and give a combined score, and then we award based on that combined score.
But that's a low percentage of projects, but a high percentage of project money.
That's correct. So the majority of the dollars are spent on those very large projects, I-15 southbound, I-15 northbound, the Tech Corridor, Mountain View. Those large projects we use generally design build. Occasionally we'll select a CMGC or what we call a progressive design build. But the majority by quantity of our projects are design bid build, where it's just a low bid price gets you the contract.
Thank you.
Question, follow-up question to that?
Yes, please.
Is that, you mentioned the committee pulled together to review those. Do you have some of the same people that do that? Are always on that committee? Do you have that committee pretty consistent, or do you have new people every time, or who?
Yes. So for each project we set up a specific committee. However, we make sure that committee is made up of representatives not from just the region or just from the specific project with the knowledge about the project. We also have them come from the central office who have been involved, and several others, and they can provide guidance. We also provide what you would call a technical assistant and an advisor that isn't involved in the scoring, but they're kind of a process witness to make sure that they're following the process. So we have several folks there in the room to make sure that we don't have anybody going outside of the instructions they've been given. Additionally, we invite in a member of the public, whether it could be a politician or it could be someone not a part of the department, to witness the process and to be what we call that process witness. And then we have them sit in to make sure that we maintain the integrity of the process and we do it the way that we said we did it. This last project that we awarded yesterday, we had a representative from Sandy City sit in on that selection. We explained to them how we should do it, and then they watch to make sure that we do it that way.
That's good. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Well done, Chris.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Rob?
And
Yes.
just if a commissioner would like to sit in on that evaluation process, again, it's as much fun as going through those performance measures. But we would love if the commissioner wanted to give the time for that. We've had commissioners do that before.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you for the invitation.
Any time with Chris is golden, so.
Commissioners, it's good to be with you this morning. Rob White, Director of Operations. Happy to be here to talk about this important topic of safety and zero fatalities. Quickly, as you look at our historical safety index, we've been pretty consistent around where we've been for the last several months, although some of our individual measures have gone up and down, and we scroll down here maybe. Let's see, here we go. The best news that I have to report to you today is that our fatalities are tracking below the 2.5% goal that Carlos mentioned in his presentation. As of this morning, and this was updated this morning, we have 21 actual fatalities that have been cleared through the police reports, and our 2.5 reduction target was 28. Now, of course, any fatality is not good news, but we're trending in the right direction there, and so that's great news to start the year, and so good to see that. And of course, we have currently 0 fatalities as far as our internal workers, which is always a good thing. What we did see an increase in, however, was our traffic or serious injuries. And if you look down below at the legend, you'll see that we've had so far 1,310. Our target was 1,287, and so we're a little bit over that. Speculation on why that is. Maybe our snowstorms had something to do with that. That's speculation, but we typically see that in snow events. We have a lot more crashes, but typically they're lower severity because the speeds are typically lower, but there's just a lot more of them. So the crashes are on the right. Let me scroll over to that real quick. And it looks like we're pretty close to our target there. So we've had a lot more injuries than our target, but we have had about the same amount of crashes we have for our target. So one of the things to look at, the Udot employee equipment damage rate, you'll notice that big blue spike there. That is most likely because of the snow plows. We've had a lot of storms in the last several weeks. Our plows have been out, as Carlos mentioned, 16 hours a day. And this includes damage that are caused by the snowplow, as well as damages from cars or vehicles running into snowplows. And that's a good reminder, as I believe you mentioned, Mr. Commissioner, or Mr. Chairman, that stay behind the plows. That's the safest place to be in a storm. We still see people cutting in and out of our plows and trying to get around them. And that can create a dangerous situation. As I believe we talked about a little bit last month, these plows have wing plows sometimes on both sides. Sometimes these plows are towing another plow behind them, so they're very complicated to drive. And those of you who have ridden along with a snowplow driver see the technology in those cabs. And so we need to be very careful of getting the word out to folks about making sure we stay behind the plows. That's the safest place to be. The road's going to be clear. Stay right behind those. Over these last several storms, I had the opportunity to follow a plow, and that was some of the best drive in the winter that I've had for many years. So, yes.
Can I just make a comment here? Again, I don't know, you probably think all I do is watch TV, but the stories that have been generated from Udot about snowplows and how to stay safe, and even the story that was done about snowplow maintenance and how many plows we have and how hard our people work to keep them up and operational. I just think there's some really great communications coming out of the department.
That's great.
Yeah, I would say I think we have the best communication in the office team that we've ever had at the department right now. And John Gleason is tireless. I was texting him 4 or 5 a.m. this morning on this tanker crash. He was on it. He knew what was going on. He's out on the road right now, but just an outstanding team.
Yeah, it's really great.
Well, I think I really enjoy having them bring the actual snowplow drivers to those types of interviews and those presentations. I think it lends a lot of credence to that, and it also helps them tell their story.
Yes.
And it shows the public that they're people that are doing a job, an important job, and that we need to give them room to do that. And so I do appreciate the communications and what gets out on our networks. So other than that, it's a quick report on what's been going on over the past. We're just starting into this new year, really, a month and a half, 2 months into the new year. Are there any other questions concerning zero fatalities? All right. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Rob. So we have legislative update. Carlos, you would like to come back?
Yes, thank you.
Please.
Because Linda's up at the window.
Yeah. Speaking of tireless.
So I affectionately refer to this as a silly season. That's a matter of respect.
Thanks, sir.
Because sometimes good people trying to do the right thing, sometimes things don't completely make sense. But I'll touch on a few bills. And what Terry's handing out right now, this is just kind of a short summary of bills that we're tracking over 100 bills right now. But these are kind of highlighted bills, and I'll touch on a couple. So House Bill 151, Representative Ivory is moving a bill. He tried it again last year. He did get this out of committee, and it's to allow people, if they've been stopped in an intersection for 90 seconds, to be able to run a red light. Now, please don't do that, because some of our traffic cycles are longer than 90 seconds. But again, it's amazing the power of some anecdotal story about a constituent that was stuck forever, didn't work, the signal was broken, went through it and got a ticket. And, you know, law enforcement during testimony says, we're not going to ticket for that. And so we're opposed to this. The Police Chiefs Association is opposed to it. The Highway Patrol is opposed to it. We think it's a bad idea to train people to run red lights. Now, Representative Moss, she's also running a bill that we like. It's a bill to you know, help combat distractions in terms of how you use your mobile phone. And we basically say you can't, you know, hold your phone and manipulate it at all. But she's also running a bill that will allow bicyclists, without stopping, to proceed through a stop sign or a red light. And I sat in committee and listened to the testimony, and I was shocked at, I'm somebody who puts 3,000 miles a year on my road bike and a couple thousand on my mountain bike. And this is a solution looking for a problem. And so we're going to be training our kids with this bill to, it's okay to run stop signs and red lights. Anyhow, so we oppose that. Probably the big bill that's out there is Senate Bill 72. This was number 8 on the Senate calendar yesterday. I'm not sure if it actually got voted on here. I'm not doing a good job of reading ahead. I apologize for that. But this is really the follow-up on the implementation of last year's Senate Bill 136. And so Senator Harper has a lot of elements in here. We support this bill. It's a good bill, and it helps local governments as well. It gives them more flexibility with some of their local sales tax monies. So a lot of people have been working on this one. House Bill 358. Representative Gibson has a bill. Now this is an interesting bill, and it has a direct impact on one of the projects you funded right now. So in law, if you're a utility and you're located in the state right away by permit, and we need to move you, the state pays 50% of the cost. Now, the best we've been able to find out, we've talked to, there's only 3 states that we've been able to find that do this. There's 17 states that don't do this. But the definition of a utility is one that actually serves the customers directly. You know, so Rocky Mountain Power meets the definition of a utility. This bill, we're on US 89, there's a significant fuel line buried underneath our roadway. And it's way down. They don't even know quite where it is, but it's way down. It could cost us $10 million, $5 million to relocate this pipe if this bill goes through, because it's changing the definition of what's a utility and will capture something that's basically from point to point in a business. And so this is a significant policy change, and our position is that's a policy decision for the legislature. If they want to make this, they should make it an understanding that it will have absolutely significant costs to transportation. So that's one that we're watching closely. House Bill 208. Representative Harrison came in, and she's a doctor, and she was passionate about health. She's passionate about helping children walk to school, and she wanted to make a difference right off the bat. And she wanted to develop a safe sidewalks program. Well, we have one, and we've been administering it. And she really likes the way we do it, so she's codifying the process that we use for the safe sidewalk program. And she's also trying to find $500,000 to add to the program that we have. And so it's all money that we can use working with local governments. So it can either be to help build sidewalks or maintain sidewalks on the state system, or it could be on the local system. And like I said, we do this today, and we anticipate that we will, I anticipate this bill will pass. Whether or not it comes with the extra money, I think, is more tenuous. So there's been 2 bills, Senate Bill 119, and to extend the truck ban on legacy. And you've probably heard about this in the news. So as part of the legacy EIS, we went through and provided all the mitigation to meet federal and state law. On top of that, the state was interested in us being able to go to construction without the threat of being sued. And so we sat down, a committee made up of senators, legislators, and I was a part of that. And we worked with the folks that had sued us and could potentially sue us after we had done the changes that the court had asked for. And one of the things that they wanted to implement was to restrict trucks on Legacy Parkway. There's no road in the state that we restrict trucks on. So this was probably it was the most difficult part of the settlement that we worked through with the legislature and this group. The deal was that it's up to 2020. So January 1 of 2020, if there's no change in law, we will open up Legacy Parkway to trucks. Now, that first bill was defeated in the Senate, there's a new bill now in the House that will actually extend it. The first one was extending the truck ban to 2022. This one will extend it to 2025. So again, from our perspective, this is a policy position for the legislature. I worry about the slippery slope of the position. These homes, most of these homes weren't located when the Legacy Parkway was built. And they built it with this expectation probably that there wouldn't be trucks on it. So I can appreciate their position. But they're alleging that the trucks will make it more dangerous for their families. If that's the case, we have a problem on every single road in the state. And so that's the slippery slope I would worry about. But I'm not sure how this is going to play out, but it was a very emotional hearing. Yes?
Who's got the House bill?
Oh, I know this. What's her name? I'll get it to you. I can't remember off the top of my head. Sorry.
That's all right.
She's a new legislator from
Yes.
California.
Yes, I can't think of her name right now too,
I'm
but I know
sorry.
who you're talking about.
She
Okay.
defeated Becky Edwards.
She took Becky's
Yeah.
position, yes.
Isn't she the
Ballard,
doctor?
Representative Ballard.
Ballard, thank you. Called a friend, thank you guys. Thank you.
That's the House Bill 339, I think.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd love to try to answer any other questions on what's going on at the legislature. Yes?
I spend too much time up there with you, so.
Yes, you do.
Do you have any expectation or desire for our participation in advocacy? Is that a role that we should play, we shouldn't play?
We don't advocate. So the only thing we advocate for is the governor's budget. And so our job is to provide information so that the legislators can make good choices. And so that's the role we play. And so the only things I'm advocating for right now, on the budget side, the governor wants to replace the fleet of airplanes that we have. We have a 19-year-old and a 20-year-old aircraft. And so there's a budget request from the general fund, which is unusual for us to request money from the general fund, of $12.5 million. That it didn't get prioritized real high coming out of our appropriating committee, but it's clearly a choice that the executive appropriations is going to have to make. Yeah. There's a statewide need for this, so this is not about DOT. We just happen to be the folks that operate it, operate the aircraft. So that piece we're advocating for, and then also there's a request for planning grants that the department would administer. It's $2 million ongoing, again from the general fund. And the governor's office, governor, is concerned that we're growing fast. We're a very urban area. And I like to say that if we're going to double our population in 35, 40 years, whatever the number is, we're not going to double the lane miles. There's nowhere to put it. There's not enough money to do that. And so we're going to have to start thinking differently about how we move people. And a big part of making transit more effective is how communities grow. And so the idea behind this is that the department would administer these planning grants to work with local governments to help them make informed decisions about the implications of different growth choices. And so those are the two things we're advocating for.
Excellent, thank you.
While you're changing the airplanes, can you add a helicopter for Region 4?
I don't think we'd want to pay the maintenance costs associated with a
we
helicopter.
should talk about that, though.
Okay.
I know Region 4 has been asking for their own plane for many years.
Well, we'll compromise the helicopter. The plane is now out of place. Thank you, Carlos.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
Carlos, I see something in the dialogue about safety inspections on our cars on the highway system. And since we're a zero fatalities initiative, it seems like to me that those two things are in conflict.
They eliminated the requirement for safety inspection last year.
Right.
Yeah, I know, but it looks like to me, I see cars on the road that got their bumpers hanging on with bungee strips. And you don't even know if they've got good brakes. Don't know if their lights work. It looks like to me that works contrary to zero fatalities on our highway
You can be pulled over by the patrol or law enforcement if they see you have a vehicle that's not functioning properly. I don't disagree with you.
Now, it seems like that Highway Patrol are not in the inspection business.
They actually administered that program.
Yeah, I know.
They had an office that administered it. So it's interesting. During that bill that came up last year, I think that was Senator McKay's bill, it was clearly going to go through. But there was folks speaking strongly against it, particularly the Highway Patrol, and we were speaking against it. So we negotiated. There was a sunset on the primary seatbelt. So we would have been, that bill, that primary law would have sunsetted 3 years after it passed. It would have sunsetted at the end of this year. And so we got the bill sponsor that, even though he voted against the original primary seatbelt law, to agree to amend his bill and eliminate that sunset provision. So we got something.
Well, that's a good something too.
It's a really good something.
Yeah.
You know, it's clear in our numbers that seatbelts are saving lives.
Mhm.
It's clear. So, you know, the facts, the problem with it, Commissioner McConkey, was there's no data nationwide to correlate between states that do inspections and less crashes. There was no data for that. And less than half the states in the country had a vehicle inspection program. And so those things together made it very difficult to speak. You know, in our role, we provide facts. And made it very difficult to come up with the facts on that.
But bald tires on wet and snowy roads kill people. Hydroplane, I mean, it's a dangerous formula.
Okay. I don't disagree.
Yeah, but you can legislate the stupidity, right?
Well, I wouldn't want to use that word because they can come back at you, but you're right.
Is that it, Mr. Chairman? Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think that's Don to take up the socialist vote.
Okay, items, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Would the commission like a short update from Brian on the condition of this road?
Brian? Yes, we would.
Notice it becomes his road.
If it's fixed, it's our road.
Yeah.
Just a little over a year ago.
Yeah, no, we had an exciting night last night. You know, I was talking with Jason this morning, and being a region director, there's a lot of neat things you get to experience, but having that 2 a.m. phone call is not one of the fondest moments of the night. So anyway, but it is fun to watch how our guys just jump on and handle the situation. We had a tanker truck full of gasoline roll over about 1800 south last night, catch on fire, explode. We had fuel that actually went down into the storm drain system, caught fire, and you know, there were some explosions even inside of the storm drain. So we had the entire road, I-15, shut down northbound and southbound for a period of time last night. Once they had the fire contained to some point, we opened up northbound and you know, mobilized everybody out there and started to game plan on how are we gonna handle the problem. And it's funny to watch the guys as their first reaction is how are we going to get this open for morning commute? And they are standing back behind the, you know, the police and the fire, just waiting for the opportunity to run in there and get things taken care of. So we were anticipating, you know, early on that we could try to get a lane open early this morning. That didn't happen. The fire burned for quite a while. About 8 o'clock this morning, we were able to remove the carcass of the vehicle and actually have our guys go in and assess the damage. It looks like there's some definite damage to some of our pavement section. It's clear on the outside lane. We've got our crews right now working with contractors to get some asphalt produced today. We're going to go in and patch that section of road with the anticipation of trying to get the road open before afternoon commute today. So the plan is we'll have it open up by this afternoon, and then we're going to be going back in probably later this weekend to get a little bit more detail on what needs to be done from a long-term fix. It'll probably be similar to what we did on the last go-around, where we're going to have to go in and do some partial depth patches. So we're going to be working on trying to figure out when the right time and what the right fix is to deal with that. But truly amazing watching our guys. That's kind of the update. Any questions?
So the sewer pipe that was kind of exploded, any damages on that section?
We won't know until we can get in a little bit. It was, yeah, hopefully not.
Thank you.
Well, this is about the same thing that happened the same time last year, isn't it?
Yeah, it was just a little bit over a year. We had the same, yeah, very exact same situation. And the funny thing, we have kind of a standing joke at the region. Wondering if Troy was going to be here today, but we have our staff meeting, and if somebody sits in Troy's seat, something usually bad happens. So all night long, I was wondering, did someone sit in Troy's seat? So,
Curse, huh?
yeah.
So what was the cause, and is the driver okay?
Yeah, that's a good question. There was 2 individuals in the tanker truck. Both of them walked away with minor injuries. So, and we don't know quite yet the details of what the cause was.
I thought it was a little Honda car.
It was a Honda car.
Yes.
Did they get hurt?
Minor injuries on both.
Yeah.
That's good.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
may I add on behalf of Commissioner Holbrook, she would like to express her appreciation to Brian and tell you great job. So I have it on text, so I'm just conveying it on her behalf.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Brian.
Work on the southern accent over there.
Okay. So we're in the agenda, item number 6, consent agenda. I would like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes and the 2019 State Amendment number 5.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further discussions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item number 6 is approved. Number 7, Ivan.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and the Commission. Ivan Hartle, Financial Programming. Today we've got a few items that we'd like to bring to the Commission for adjustments to our STIP. The first item, 7A1, is in Region 1 along SR 60. The request is to add $1 million to this $1 million of transportation funds to this project SR 60 from 168 to 89. On our map, the line's a little harder to see, but it starts up here above the golf course and comes down here below 89. The justification for this, the project estimated costs have increased due to higher than planned costs for major bid items, as well as specific areas that have been identified to have an increased pavement application. On this, we were looking at with the region. We had a project that was similar to this project in 2017, and the bid item or cost per ton was $62 a ton, and the new estimate for this project is $80 per ton. So that's the increase that we've seen on this project.
Mm-hmm.
That being the case, our request for today is a motion to approve this $1 million on SR 60 168 to 89 project as detailed.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the item A1. Any further discussions?
Just
Yes?
where does this extra $1 million come from?
It's in their transportation solutions funds.
Oh, great, sorry, I missed that part, thank you.
That's right.
Okay, there you go, okay.
From their efficiencies of other projects.
Great, thank you.
That's unprogrammed right now.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item A1 is approved.
Thank you. Item number 2 is, there's 2 items in item 2A and 2B. This is our transportation alternative projects. Most of these projects are around active transportation. In Region 2, we have 8 projects that we'd like to add to the STIP. You can see from the descriptions, we have a multi-use trail, several sidewalks, a new trail, and some bike lanes to be added. Most of these projects in Region 2, in fact, I'm sorry, all of these projects have a local contribution of 25% or higher on these projects. The map shows you the disbursement of these projects and where they're located.
Now, these local match, that's actual money.
That's money coming from the local governments.
So it's not donation of ground or labor, it's actual money.
Yes, it's actual money. Well, let me double check. It's actual money. This is not an in-kind contribution. It's money coming from the. So for this project, our request is the approval to add these 8 new transportation alternative projects as detailed.
Do you want it separately? Motion for 2A and 2B separate, or together?
If that's all right.
I'll move to approve.
And I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion on the 2A? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Approved.
Thank you. 2B is also our transportation alternative projects, this one coming from Region 4. We have 2 projects, one the SR 18 Vale Gap. It's this small section leading into Vale that has very little shoulder. This is a section of road that in the St. George area there's a lot of marathons, bike races, things like that, and this is a gap where there's very little shoulder for those activities. This would complete that with a 6-foot shoulder. And the second project is a multi-agency study, a feasibility study basically to look at ways to connect Hurricane into Zion with a multi-use trail.
This should have heard a little bit about that last March.
Yes.
We did, yeah.
The VAO project will be funded by UDOT, fully by UDOT, but the feasibility study is part of the, or is in coordination with, down here, the Zion Park and the Recreational Collaborative. Being said, our request, our motion for today is the approval to add these 2 new transportation alternative projects as detailed.
Move to approve.
I second.
Motion to approve and seconded, and then any further discussions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 2B is, A2B is approved.
Thank you. Item 3, I will introduce this item and then ask Brian to come talk through this with the commission. This is Porter Rockwell Boulevard, 4th segment, East Jordan Canal. The request is to add this money, $3,000 from WFRC, their MPO funds, and I'm sorry, $3 million from MPO and $2 million from the Salt Lake County. The project is located here. Here's Porter Rockwell, Redwood, and along this 4th segment.
One of these days we're going to see that whole road fixed, right?
One of these days. Yeah, one of these days.
So last month in my in the region update that I gave, we kind of introduced this topic a little bit. So I wanted to just go into a little bit more detail. Back in 2016, we entered into an agreement with Bluffdale City on a jurisdictional transfer, and part of that transfer basically had some commitments that the city was going to provide, as well as some commitments that UDOT was going to provide. So here is, just to orient you, this is, let's see, Redwood Road is right here, so we're looking on the very west side of Porter Rockwell. This is the Jordan River underneath here and the railroad tracks. So part of the agreement is that Bluffdale City was going to construct the roadway segment from 146 all the way down to the bridge, and then also construct the roadway segment on the west side and tie into Redwood Road. back in 2016, when we did our estimates, they were they were a rough estimate, and since then we've had a chance to go and really refine the design and get a better understanding of what the true costs are going to be. So part of this item that's in front of you today is that when we looked at the estimates, the numbers, the estimates for both segment 4 and segment 5 came in really low, or really high. Sorry.
Yeah.
And so
That would be nice.
Yeah. So Bluffdale has been working diligently to try to figure out a way to come up with that delta to go ahead and build both of these segments, and they've been working really well with us in partnership. So the item in front of you today is to add additional money to this segment 4, which is over on this side, and in doing so, they'll be able to go ahead and complete the section of segment 4 to a certain point. The overall driver behind this project is get the whole thing opened up in its entirety, and we've got money right now sitting out ready to start construction the end of 2020, 2021 timeframe. And so, but getting both of the city segments constructed plays into being able to meet that schedule. So we've worked with Bluffdale on both segment 4 and segment 5 as they've come up with a shortfall in their funds. We didn't want to delay their 2 projects, and so what we did is we've eliminated some of the scope on both segment 4 and segment 5, and we're going to be planning on coming back at a future date and adding some additional money to the bridge project. So to meet the budget that the city had, we've eliminated a box culvert on this side and a box culvert on this side, as well as pulled the roadway segment back to just to the side of where those box culverts are at. So at a later date, we'll be coming back asking to add some additional money to the bridge project, which we feel like we're going to need to do that for the bridge as well, because our estimates were low. So we're in the process of working out and trying to figure out what the true cost of the bridge, and then we'll be also adding that additional scope from Bluffdale to that project.
So Brian, are you going to be affected by the UP's reconstruction or your organization by this bridge too?
Hopefully they'll have it. Hopefully things will be settled by then, 2021.
Okay.
Yeah, but it could.
It's not, we'll have bigger problems.
Yeah.
I thought I saw the Bluffdale mayor here earlier.
Yeah, he is. So
Bluffdale he had a doctor's appointment he had to run to, but
okay.
We've got representative from Bluffdale, Mark Reed here.
Okay.
Do you want to add anything?
Just sign the blank check, we'll be happy to.
I just want to thank Udot and Wasatch Front for the help and effort that they've put into this project. This will be just an amazing bridge once it's finished. There is no east-west connection between 126 South and 2100 North. So this is a very important project for the entire region and for our friends in Utah County and our residents in Bluffdale and Harriman. So I just greatly appreciate the effort on this. This is a little 3-lane road that Bluffdale needs that has turned into a 7-lane. Thank you.
Thank you.
Definitely needed.
Yeah, we'd love to have a local contribution for sure, anytime.
Questions?
Any question from Brian?
I'd move for approval.
Okay.
Second.
You don't even have to ask for it, we're ready for it.
That's fantastic.
So if there's no further discussions and questions, then all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item 8.3 is approved.
Thank you. Our next item, item 4, is in Region 3, SR 113 shoulder widening, Charleston to Midway. It's an increase of the Highway Safety Fund, $750,000. Additional funds are requested in order to address increases in construction utility relocation costs.
This is the portion that we're gonna get the 50%, 50/50 by the utility companies, or no? Anybody?
You can answer that. So, Matt's here.
Come on, Matt. That's kind of where there's no shoulders on that. It's got a steep bank.
Bicycles on there.
Yeah, it's a crazy road.
Yes, it is.
So this project, we added some transportation solutions money to widen out the shoulders. And when we came up kind of short on funding, we actually requested some help through traffic and safety, and they ran an analysis on it and found that there was a cost-benefit ratio there that they could contribute $750,000 towards that widening. So we already have the match in there already.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly with cyclists on there, there's no, it's just dangerous, so this is definitely needed.
Yes, it is.
This is another one of those widely used roads.
Much.
These
It's
connectors.
a lot of traffic.
I mean, I'd move for approval unless there's more discussion. This one seems we gotta do this one, it's just not
I'll
safe.
second.
Wow, I have anxious commissioners here.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Number A4 is approved.
Item number 5, also in Region 3, SR 164, Mill Road, Woodland Hills Drive. This particular intersection, we had a signal project already in place, and we would like to add a turn lane on this intersection to account for growth in the area. So we'd like to increase through our Transportation Solutions Fund $750,000 to this project to incorporate that.
So did we make a correction on the bottom of the motion? Go. Yes, okay. Thank you. Do we have any motion?
I'll move.
Oh,
A second.
there's a motion and a second. Any further discussions, questions? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 6, Region 3, along US 6. There's Jericho Junction, which is just just west of Nephi. Pavement, low volume road. Region 3 requests approval to add a new 2020 low volume pavement project to reserve the life of this pavement on the US 6, milepost 115, milepost 123. These funds are coming from their low volume fund. They will add this project.
So this is a new project.
This is a new project to add to the state.
Okay.
So that being said, our request is for approval to add this project, the US 6 from milepost 115.26 to 123, project to the 2020 low volume pavement program.
I'd move for approval. Anytime you can preserve and extend, certainly we need to do that.
Yep.
Second. Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I wonder how the volume
Approved.
really is. That's what
We
he
got
said.
one car off the money.
Thank you. Item number 7, in Miller County applied for a federal build grant and received authorization, received approval for this project just north of Delta, and we are going to be a pass-through for these funds. It's called the Bush-Wellman Highway. We call it the Bush-Wellman Road in Miller County. There's also a letter authorizing from Miller County requesting us to act as a pass-through for this project. Being said, for the commission, we're requesting to add this project, the Bush-Wellman Road Miller County project, to our 2019 STIP.
Ivan, where is the actual road? I can't see.
Is it bush or
the
brush?
top.
Both words are used.
Brush.
It's brush? Okay.
Is that out there by the power plant?
It is. It's a segment leading towards the town.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, that's where it is.
Did we know that they have even applied for this grant? Did we know this grant exists?
No.
There's
Mr.
some.
Chairman,
Yes.
we're not going to pass the money through. We can't do that. We have to administer the project.
Yeah.
It's federal highway money. We're the only entity in the state that can actually administer Title 23.
Oh, I find that there's some smart people in southern Utah. They can ask for find the money.
Can I just ask for a point of clarification on that? How do you define the difference between pass-through and administer?
Pass-through, we would just send the money to the local government. Administer means that we will be the people signing the contract, approving the payments, making sure that they meet the federal law.
Excellent, thank you.
Oversight,
Thanks,
sounds
Carl.
like.
So let's see the letter from the county commission.
We
Okay.
vote on that?
Sure, not yet. You ready?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Turn it over to Lon.
Lyon McMillan.
Infrastructure Bank, SIB
Well, welcome back.
Good to be back. It's been a while.
Yes.
All right, so today we're going to talk about a loan modification request from Salt Lake County. Last June, you approved a state infrastructure bank loan to Salt Lake County in the amount of $23.2 million at 2.98 interest rate and a payback term of 7 years. During the formalization process, after you approve it, then we go through a contracting and agreement process, and as we were looking at the financials, the cash flow analysis indicated that a 10-year term would better meet their cash flow expectations. And so, as we were talking about that, typically for a 10-year payback, the guideline would suggest an increased rate. And so, in return for extending the payback term from 7 to 10 years and leaving the rate unchanged, Salt Lake County has agreed to commit to continue paying even after the 10 years in year 11, 12, and 13 to the tune of $10 million to help with or participate in a project to alleviate congestion at the mouth of the canyons. Right now, as you know, you also, through last May and June, a parking study at the mouth of the canyons that has yet to be completed. And once that's completed, we'll understand what that project looks like, and then Salt Lake County will agree to, it's kind of like a reimbursement of our investment at the tail end of this loan.
Up to 10. We don't have an open-ended check.
Yeah. Be really specific, yeah, so up to 10 million then.
So the motion that we're asking for is to approve the modification of the loan from 7 to 10 years, and keep the rate unchanged at 2.98%, contingent on Salt Lake County continuing payments in years 11, 12, and 13 to the tune of $10 million.
Move to approve as described.
Right, second.
Okay, any further discussions? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lyon. Okay, Charles, you're up. Item number 8 is corridor preservation.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
As is our custom, I'd like to start with an overview of the status of the RDW corridor preservation budget. Scroll up. You'll notice our balance forward of approximately $18.5 million. You'll recall in our past meetings we talked about some pending reimbursements from the Highway 89 project of about $10 million that has been completed, and so that balance forward now includes those reimbursements. Ms. McGuire has been working on some fund reimbursements from the West Davis Corridor, Big Airport Interchanges project, which we will talk about in a moment, and Mountain View Corridor. Adding those 3 different project reimbursements that are in process of, we have slightly less than $17 million pending to be returned to the fund from those now funded projects. We had a little over $600,000 in revenue, completed a little over $5.5 million in purchases, that have previously been approved by the commission. Those are detailed here along with some other expenses that are incurred as part of the acquisition process, leaving a fund balance with those reimbursements factored in. We hope to have those done next week of slightly over $30.5 million. You will notice that prior obligations that the commission has approved that have not yet closed are just a hair under $7 million, leaving a fund balance of just over $23.5 million. The next items are what we hope to ask your approval for. We have on Banner at 106 a now funded project and 2 previously approved acquisitions that were not quite completed. We'd like to move those through the project acquisition process and have the project pay for them directly rather than from the fund. And then we have 5 proposed acquisitions that have been approved by the advisory council earlier this month for your consideration. Factoring all of that in and everything that we are requesting today were to be approved. We broke this in 2 ways just so you can understand those de-obligation requests and why we feel they're very important. Without the de-obligations, we would be in the negative. With the de-obligations, the fund would have a balance of a little over $600,000. That's why we hope to walk through that and we'll ask your approval of that. If there aren't any questions about the status of the fund balance, I would add, given where we would wind up if we get through all of these, I've asked Mr. McGuire to focus their efforts in the coming weeks on project reimbursements that are still pending to make sure that this fund is receiving the funds it's entitled to by statute. Make sure that our corridor preservation process continues and stays on track. I know she's been working very hard on that. That's why she and Mr. Parker are sitting together at the back. If there aren't any questions, I'll move into item 8A. This is a request for de-obligation of $493,000. Again, this is related to the Banger 106 South project. I'll scroll down to the map. You'll recall back in November you approved this acquisition through the Corridor Preservation Fund. Now that project is funded, we would like to de-obligate those funds. And that is the request we would make of the commission to de-obligate that $493,000 in association with this acquisition.
So moved. I'm a member of the subcommittee. We talked about this and feel this is the right way to go, so I move it.
I'll second.
Okay. So de-obligation is not a dirty word. It's actually a good thing, huh? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item A is carried.
Thank you. Item 8B is just to the south of this property. You'll recall we spoke again in November about acquiring some portion of a condominium building. We require one of the floors, not the other, because of which owners were interested in selling and which weren't. You had previously approved $1.652 million for this acquisition. Now that the project is funded, we would like to request that we de-obligate that $1.652 million, return it to the corridor fund. Yes, the Banger 106 South project work on this acquisition. I would add, given that there are some tenants here, there are potential relocation rights that this would open up for those tenants. So again, it's a way to ensure those tenants have an opportunity to access that relocation benefit that might be available to them.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on item 8B. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Approved.
Item 8C is an acquisition for a park and ride lot. This is part of Mountain View Corridor's environmental obligations in order to move into future phase. We need to facilitate some transportation components near Mountain View Corridor in order to eventually move into the great separated portions of Mountain View. I think I said that right. This would be used for a future park and ride lot. The property is at 5524 West Branches Loop Road in West Jordan. And picture is worth 1,000 words. So scroll down to the aerial, and you'll see here it is just off of the intersection of 56 West and 7800 South. The property is 1.22 acres. It has a planned community zoning and has appraised for $960,400, which works out to about $18 per square foot. Again, this would help with the future phases of Mountain View Corridor. We would request the Commission's approval to purchase this 1.22-acre lot for the appraised value of $960,400.
Now, is this piece of property going to be added to additional property, make a bigger parking lot, or is this the lot?
I don't believe it will be. This is owned by a subsidiary of Peterson Development. They have development planned for this area. There will be, you'll see our next item is another park and ride a little further to the south. The idea is we're going to have several park and ride lots along 56 West to open up 56 West as a transit corridor. This will be one of several.
How many parking spaces are going to be in this lot?
To be honest, I don't know. Does anybody know the answer to that? I apologize. I don't know the answer to that.
Don't ask hard questions.
Well,
But that's his job.
But if you'd like to help lay it out, that would be helpful.
There's some really cool apps to do that effectively these days. But this property is just going to get more and more valuable. This is a very growing part, and the sooner we buy it, the better, in my humble commercial real estate.
So is there going to be housing around that parking lot then, Lou?
Likely to be, just given the trans-oriented developments that are coming up in that part of the world.
This particular corner will have probably retail, I think.
Yeah, on the corners, right, but it's
there is a
servicing.
significant amount of housing going in, just a little bit off of this very busy intersection. Peterson Development has a pretty significant development plan. You can sort of see that traffic circle just to the west of that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of low, medium, and high density housing planned for that area.
So are you asking the question, Danny, are we going to try to acquire this piece?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Is it going to? It looks.
It certainly has some layout challenges, but I trust the parking engineers, such a thing, would be able to make this work.
I think they're parking gods. The parking gods.
That's right.
Barking dogs?
No. I move to approve. Before this gets any worse.
There's a motion and a second on item number 8C. Any further discussions, questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Approved.
Item 8D is another proposed parking ride for Mountain View Corridor further south at 5573 West, 90th South in South Jordan. It is a .74 acre lot, same zoning. It is appraised for $720,100, so a little over 22 per square foot. I think Commissioner McConkey's questions point out some interesting items that you may notice in the slight difference in appraised values here. This is a little bit higher. You'll notice it's a rectangular, not an irregular lot. So the parking pieces here would be a whole lot easier to design and implement. This parcel also has direct frontage on a very busy street at 90th South. It has a little better connectivity to the rest of the valley, since 90th does tie in at I-15 with interchange, whereas 7800 South didn't. There's also a little bit more density of population around this area, so the appraised value did come in a little bit higher here. This is a little bit smaller than the last one. It's a little bit higher on a per square foot basis. We would ask your approval to acquire this .74 acre lot for the appraised value of $720,100.
So in this particular lot, there will be only one access point from 90 South?
That's correct. However, we're acquiring this from America First Credit Union. They plan to build a credit union on this lot. There will be cross access through 56 West. It'll be it'll have a fairly large parking lot, of which a portion will be a park and ride. They've already laid that out and designed it. I'm not sure where they are in their approval process.
access to be able to get through to 56 West as well.
Okay.
I'd move for approval.
Okay.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on item 8D. Any further discussion?
Just maybe a silly question that I should already know the answer to. Did we go and approach them about this, or did they come to us? And, I mean, how does part of that work?
We approached them.
Okay, thanks.
The park and ride components, the transit components for the future Matthew corridor are significant and important. So this is one where if we see an opportunity or we learn about somebody who's moving forward with something, it behooves us to approach them and at least ask.
Great, thank you.
All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item 8D is approved.
Moving into 8E, this is another Mountain View corridor piece much further to the north at 6265 West and south of Salt Lake City. The overall property is just a hair over 10 acres. It has some industrial development that you can see that has already gone in just to the east of it. The appraised value of this parcel is $2.794 billion. And you can see the breakdown of the fact sheet of $625 per square foot. Again, future construction of Mountain View corridor. Fortunately, this landowner, when they put in their development, was aware of the corridor coming. I anticipate, I understand they own some property to the north, and as we sort out some of our funding issues, they've expressed interest in having additional parcels acquired to facilitate this corridor moving to the north. Our request to the commission would be to acquire this significant parcel at the appraised value of $2.794 million.
I so move, having sat in on committee meetings justifying this. It's a very wise thing to do to get ahead of this opportunity.
And just to orient you a little bit, if you guys to the next picture, you can see where it gets us pretty darn close to Interstate 80.
Yeah.
Up to the north, that's what the dark green lines are there on the second image.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 8E is approved.
Item 8F is a home located at 2357 East Bobcat Way in Eagle Mountain. This ties into the SR 73 project that we've spoken about quite a bit over the last few months. This is not a homeowner. They've been in their home for almost 2 decades. They are looking to downsize for retirement. The project makes selling this home a serious challenge for them. It's a home just slightly over 3,000 square feet with a little over an acre that is appraised for $475,000. Scroll down. You'll see it's labeled here on this image as 2357. You'll recall we talked about several of these homes recently that Diane acquired and worked very hard to acquire. The parcels in green are ones we have already acquired for this corridor. This particular parcel, you'll notice the larger rectangular blue outline. That's a detention pond that is planned in the area. So this would help facilitate the construction and water retention right here at Bobcat Way. Our request to the commission would be to proceed with the acquisition of this home at the appraised value of $475,000.
I'll move to approve.
And I'd second.
Okay, motion and a second on item number 8B. On F, any further discussions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? 8F is approved.
The last corridor preservation item involves 5 separate parcels, all owned by the same entity. They are located at 800 West and SR 73. You will notice that between the 5 parcels, we have a breakdown on each one, and I'll scroll to the image in a moment.
expressed interest in selling all of these parcels or none of them. That's why we're bringing them to you together as a packet, because that's what the landowner has asked. What I would point out, these parcels, you'll notice, sit on, the fact sheet identifies it as part of the Mountain View corridor, and it certainly is, but what you'll see is that it also is where Mountain View is planned to tie into the future SR 73 expansion that we've talked about. And as you go to the east, this ties into Pioneer Crossing. So this is essentially the crossroads of three very significant projects. These acquisitions do present a very unique opportunity to facilitate all three of those and really create a lot of synergy between them as these projects move forward. While it is a very significant total acquisition, I would ask you to consider that as part of why it makes sense to proceed with these. The advisory council discussed this fairly extensively and concluded this was their recommendation to the commission. But I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
So, parcel number 4, what kind of designation is it? Is it residential or the commercial or AC, or do we know?
What's the zoning on parcel 4? Do you know?
It's
You know, most of these are zoned somewhat commercial. That's the highest and best use.
So they have a mix of commercial, I would imagine, along the frontage and the roads that exist here. I have to confess I didn't go that deep into the appraisals, but I would expect there to be a mix of commercial and high density residential, matching some of the surrounding development.
That parcel number 5 looks like it's got a funny little remnant down there. It's lost.
There's, I can't tell if it's either a drainage outlet or an access point. There's some water drainage in that area, okay. So that's why it shows as being.
So it's attached to that.
And Mountain View is purchasing as part of the project everything that surrounds that little parcel up there. So they're buying to the north and they're buying a little bit to the east of that parcel. But that one isn't impacted by the project money, so.
What about the big space that's in between all of this?
That is owned by a separate property owner. You will notice that that property owner would be left with access going to the south. So the impact and potential severance damages to that parcel are probably not as significant. They have approached us about a total acquisition. We have not felt it appropriate to proceed with that. Given that they have that access, we would anticipate acquiring what is needed for the project as part of the project.
Okay, I see.
Well, given its key strategic location with 3 major interchanges, I move for approval. Even with it's a big dollar amount. It's one of the biggest ones we've done. And we debated it at quite, I would say the word debated, but we discussed at great length in the advisory council and felt like this is the right time to get that prepared for our future growth going forward. So that was a motion, I apologize. Motion and explanation.
Okay.
I'd second that motion.
Okay, there's a motion and a second on item 8G. So any further discussion? So, Rodden, yeah, G. Any further discussions, questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Approved.
As we used to say in the Army, someday you'll thank us for this. Anyway.
It is helpful to have your perspective on this, Lou, so
Well,
thank
you
you.
look at the big maps. This is where the growth is right now, and now's the time to buy. Of course, in the commercial real estate business, we often tell you that.
Yeah.
But in reality, this is it for the good of the public.
And then I also have item 9.
We looked at it.
Is that,
Yeah.
you guys,
Yes.
is that somewhere that, this is a property exchange related to the West Davis corridor involving the Alpine Church. Again, the pictures were words. Scroll down. You can see that they own approximately 5 acres at 3351 South, 2000 West in Syracuse. It's again a 5-acre parcel valued at approximately $85,000 per acre. Udot has acquired below that in purple on this map, a parcel also for the construction of the corridor. We had the portion that's still within the alignment, obviously we're not proposing to trade. It's only the portion that is outside and connects up to 2000 West that we would propose to trade with the Alpine Church. They have appraised at the same value, and we would ask the Commission's approval to proceed with this 5-acre for 5-acre exchange with the Alpine Church.
I'll move to approve.
Okay. I need a second.
I'll second.
A motion and a second on item number 9. Any further discussion?
Those are of equal value?
Yes. It's 85,000 per acre. Even exchange. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you, Charles.
You're not cleaning the gasoline up the road.
Okay, we're going to ask Lyle McMullen to come back and talk administrative rules review. This is item number 10 on your agenda.
So again,
Hello.
all right. So in last year's legislative session, the legislature passed this little-known minor bill called Senate Bill 136. And one of the things that was contained in it was a provision that required Udot to put in place a process for overseeing and coordinating public-private partnerships. Additionally, resource investments, including identification and development of public-private partnership opportunities. Additionally, in that statute, it talked about this unique little animal called an unsolicited proposal. Typically, the process that we go through, as you know, is that we go through a STIP and we have planning and we do analysis and we then come to you for funding for projects that we have vetted and prioritized. And this rule puts in place a process required in Senate Bill 136 that enables a proposer to propose a project that we have not asked you to do yet. And these unsolicited proposals will follow our normal process for solicitation. Basically, it is somebody comes to us and says, hey, I want to do a project. And then this rule provides a process for how to vet such a proposal. And it's several steps, and if it gets to a certain point, then they are required to put some money in the game. And also in the rule, it says if we don't think it's a good proposal, we don't have to review it at all.
And these are supposed to be the transportation projects, right? Or transportation related?
Transportation infrastructure.
Okay.
So that we actually put it in the rule, we changed the title to make sure that it is narrowly focused to transportation infrastructure public-private partnerships. And one of the key things that as we were writing it, we wanted to make sure that there was lots of transparency and light on the process. And one of the other things is national policy is that once we get an unsolicited proposal, our intent is to turn it into a project solicitation and make it competitive. So that is also in the rule. We get it, and then if there's anything proprietary or the secret sauce, then we work with them to make sure that that is not something that is provided to any potential competitors. And that is the extent of this rule.
Yes. My comment is, based on experience around the country, that people are reluctant to do an unsolicited proposal if they do all the work for it, and then all of a sudden it goes back out to public competition. So I don't know how this in reality is going to work, but I know in Alabama and other places I've heard stories of people who have just said, forget it, we're not going to get into that game with you.
As I was I'm also putting together the public-private partnership, the formal process. It's going to be a project delivery method similar to CMGC and design build and design bid build. It'll just be another part of our delivery toolkit. And we hired a consultant to help us put that together and do research for us. And you're right, less than 10% of unsolicited proposals ever reach what they call financial close.
Do we see a lot of these?
We just
We
started.
don't know yet, but we
Not-
believe
well,
that there are
but I
several
mean,
people who
have-
would like to.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
there's
we have been
interest in it,
approached.
but whether or not the hurdles are so high that people say, hey, forget it, or not, I guess that's to be determined.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
The idea that Commissioner Kramer brought up was really a big part of the discussion during the creation of this bill. And because if you have an unsolicited proposer submit an idea, you can't share their secret sauce and level the field. So leveling is not something you can do. So but we are also concerned that we don't proceed with a single proposer. And how do we determine whether or not that's a competitive value that's being proposed?
Exactly.
How do we know we're getting best value for the taxpayers, or the transportation solution is the best? So the idea that we talked about with the sponsor was that we would take the concept of what they're proposing at a high level and say we've received a proposal to accomplish these goals. Not say any of this, details of what their proposal was, and then see if there's any that might want to propose something to achieve those same goals.
Sure.
It's a tightrope.
It sure
We're
is.
gonna have to try to walk.
Yeah. The other challenge is 50 states have 50 different rules. I have friends in Australia who say, look, you go to Australia, there's one for the entire country. Here in America, you never know which game you're going to be playing because the states have that individual rights. So whether or not we get a national 3P kind of approach or not is still a consideration. I've been to some conferences, they said, yeah, we've got to do that because there's a lot of money sitting on the sidelines who would love to get in the game, long-term money, pension fund money from around the world, but they're not going to look at us unless us being the United States or Utah without some kind of more uniformity.
Yeah, and I struggle with thinking that we'll ever get to the point of uniformity. If you look around the country, there's such diversity amongst the states in terms of even what procurement methods are allowed to use to deliver construction projects.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of states that still don't do design build or construction manager, general contractor. And so I think it would be a big states' right issue.
Yeah.
This was for information only.
Yeah, we welcome if you have any help.
No, just one more question.
Yes,
Rule is the equivalent of policy versus statute? Rule is statute.
No, anything that the department does that affects entities outside the department, we have to do through rulemaking. So policy tells us how we operate internally, who we pass a signature off to internally. So, but we can't do anything that affects the public externally unless it be in rule. So it's that middle ground between statute and policy. And a lot of times when you're developing a statute, there's a lot of details, and the folks that are developing that statute are not necessarily the experts in that arena. And so this is really that ability for the folks that have expertise in this area to put the meat on the skeleton.
Excellent, thank you.
It's a tough one.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's in good hands, Lyle. We congratulate you on this.
He can't wait.
Okay, item number 11, accomplishments, Region 3 first and back by the Region 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, Commissioners. I'm Rob Clayton, I'm the Region 3 Director. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning to report on Region 3, our status and accomplishments. I'm going to jump right in and start with some charts that you saw last month with Regions 1 and 2. What this shows is that our pavements in Region 3, this is the high volume system. It shows that our pavement conditions are trending in the right direction. And we're actually, for the first time in 2018, going to meet both goals. The goal to have 60% in the good or better category and less than 5% in the poor category. Maybe another thing to point out is the change in trend that happened between 2014 and 2015, and that's related to a gas tax increase that changed the funding levels. This is the low volume system in Region 3. Again, pavements are trending in the right direction. We're going to meet our goal for good or better of 30%, and pretty darn close to 2018 or less in the core category. And again, things are trending in the right direction. This just gives you a view of the program overall and the funding levels and where Region 3 is. We got $35 million for 2019, and that amount goes down in 2020, 2021, 2022, but that's related to the conditions and trying to maintain our pavements at the goals that we've set. So, and you can see the funding level and the low volume and the reconstruction program as well. And then just to give you an idea of where these projects are located throughout the region, they're spread out across all 6 counties, and we're kind of across the years, as you can see there. If you have questions about specific projects, feel free to contact me, and I can give you that information.
Got some tough territory there.
Yeah, a lot of rural land miles.
Yep.
So the goals, one of the management strategies that the department has is what's called a surface area goal, and this is based on the definition of a surface area being a lane mile, so 12 feet wide, 1 mile long, and Region 3 in the high volume category has about 3,600 surface areas, and the goal is set with the idea that we're going to treat each segment once every 11 years. So our goal is 330. And you can see that we, in recent years, have easily met that goal. And it fluctuates somewhat. And that has to do with the type of treatments that are selected and the relative cost of those treatments. But over time, the average more than meets the goal of 330.
Rob, can you stay up for a minute? We have a term up there that I'm not sure if the commissioners have seen before, Code 1. And so he's talking about different funding programs here, really the preservation, rehabilitation, and reconstruction. Those are construction projects that you fund. The Code 1 is done at the region at their discretion with operations money. So when one of those pies that I showed you, where they're fixing Commissioner Kramer's signs, and striping the road, and so some of that is pavement work that they're doing. So
now I know where it's going.
That's inside baseball, I guess.
Yeah. And so why is 2021 not up to goal? Because you built a surplus in the 2018 and 19?
Yeah, and the treatments that we're going to do in that year are a little bit more expensive, so we can't treat as many surface areas. And it also has to do with if you remember in the first slide, the trend was pretty significantly upward, and the goal is to maintain right around those goal areas. And so it's just a prioritization of those funds and applying them in the right locations at the right time. This is a relatively new measure that the department is using, the sustainability index, and this is basically the ratio of the amount of life that we add to the system with treatments divided by the amount of life that we lose each year in time, with age. And the goal would be to be right at 1. We add back as much as we lose. And you can see that there are some fluctuations with this, but overall, we're targeting aim right at that goal of 1.0 with this new measure. Transitioning to transportation solutions, there was some discussion of this earlier. Region 3 receives, in 2020, we received $12 million to the program. That will go up to 13.5 in 2021 and 2022. We've got one other thing to mention here is when we get efficiencies on projects, when projects finish under budget, that money comes on the pavement side. For transportation solutions, that money comes back into the program to reprogram. We've got a somewhat aggressive approach to this, where you see at the bottom our unprogrammed balance becomes negative, and that's because we're anticipating efficiencies and projects when and if that happens. Just to give you an idea, we balance this between asset management. So in 2020, asset management was $10 million of roughly 12.8, and small capacity projects was quite a bit smaller. But if you look in the future years, it flips. So we're really balancing this need between asset management and capacity in our transportation solutions program. On the contingency side, each region receives $1.5 million in contingency funds that we program for things that are difficult, smaller dollar projects and activities that are difficult to fund otherwise, but have high return. We've got 1.4 million of our 1.5 program. We had some carryover from the previous year, and right now we're looking at holding some of that current balance, waiting to see what happens with the rest of our snow year, just so that we can be prepared. To give you an idea of the use of that contingency funds, about 600,000 of it was planning and studies, and about 750,000 was in construction.
Keep that 20,000 in there for signs. Thank you.
Is this for you?
Well, I'll throw in some personal money too.
Did you get that in the minutes?
Happy to, happy to.
I want to give you some project highlights. Our highest profile project is the I-15 Tech Corridor. The project has met some significant milestones and has had quite a bit of success. The time elapsed, officially we're 36%, and we're about 40% complete with moving the work forward. So we're in a good position there. Looking at milestones, the Triumph Boulevard Bridge, the 600 East Bridge, and the one-way frontage roads were significant milestones or achievements in the schedule this year. Each of those took roughly 6 months to get completed. Pretty significant accomplishment, especially the Triumph Boulevard Bridge, to get that open in such a short amount of time. And it provides some mobility enhancement in that area that is really going to help, especially this year, as the project turns its attention to the interchanges at SR 92 and at 2100 North. So that part of the project is going well. Here's some interesting information. The project is tracking travel times and speeds through the I-15 corridor in construction. You can see that pre-construction, the peak periods were almost all in the 60-mile-an-hour range, and they remained in the 60-mile-an-hour range after construction. The one exception is the southbound PMP, where it was 53 and it's now 55. So the strategy of adding an extra lane during construction is working well and serving citizens around the well.
Point out for that on the lunch hour that day, we got in a van and drove around and looked at the work, and man, that's just complicated that they're even doing that. When you look at the scheduling and everything, we had the contractor with us and Udot employees, and I just want to say I'm amazed, and I drive that every day. I work up there, and yeah, I haven't noticed any downturn in my ability to get to and from work in Lehigh at all with this. They've kept traffic flowing up there because I experience it every day, monitor it every day. And between the painted lines, the pavement with the plows this year, blowing up now to get those, they get right on that. So I just wanted to say hats off to all the contractors and crew and everything that works there. I've actually we drove that, and it's just impressive how they're getting that to stay on task, stay ahead of the schedule.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for observation.
Well done.
So we need to keep it.
Some other project highlights, the Redwood Road project. This was from Lakeview Terrace down to Village Parkway, where the slope was widened to be 5 lanes with bike lanes. Signals were added at Stillwater Drive, Ring Road, and This is scheduled to be actually finished this summer. $26.2 million project value. Mountain View Corridor. This is the segment that connects 2100 North at Redwood Road to SR 73. This is being built in the configuration with the frontage roads first that will allow for a future possible expansion to a freeway configuration. This project is continuing also as scheduled. You can see the photo there. The new portion is to the right, so that photo is looking south. This picture shows the construction of the ped and bike underpass. That's what's there by the crane.
Yeah.
The next phase will be, traffic will be flopped over to the other side, and then they'll build the portion to the west. This is going to also enhance mobility pretty significantly in that area. Project highlight from the basin, the US 40 Bridge on the Knighton. This project, if you've driven out on US 40 in the basin, you know this. In fact, my parents who live in Vernal, we visited last night, and my dad told me how awesome this project was. So, and I didn't do
That's always nice.
That's all I need to know, right? My dad was.
Your dad likes it.
Passing lanes, 2 miles of passing lanes, two-way turn lanes added in strategic spots, 9 miles of pavement rehab, flattening of the shoulders. The shoulders were very steep, so steep in fact that our maintenance people couldn't actually drive off the road. They had to access it from a certain spot. Just a really nice enhancement.
Well, Commissioner Winters and now Senator Winters, and he told me that that's a good start, but it isn't done yet. Does that tell you anything? You're on Transportation
Like
Committee
Senator
too, isn't he?
Pemberton.
Tell him to talk to Rob's dad. That's good
My
stuff.
nephew.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, he calls me up all the time.
The Utah Valley Express, the UBX project, opened up just last month officially, but they have been operating since August and actually passed 1 million boardings in January. It's successful implementation. It's enhancing access to those two universities and the commercial areas in between, and it's being utilized by the public. Some of our challenges, this is probably the biggest issue in Region 3 that we face over in the near term, but also over the next couple decades, and that is growth. The University of Utah did some projections and showed that if you look at the light green portion, if you add the growth in the 3 counties above it, Salt Lake, Davis, and Weaver, the light green is more growth than all of those 3 counties together. And in 2065, the population of Utah County will be almost equivalent to Salt Lake County. So, as we contemplate transportation improvements and things like the corridor preservation, the action that we just took, I think those kind of preparations and strategic actions are great at what we need to do to position ourselves to serve this tremendous growth that's coming. To give you an idea of where that growth is going to locate, the image on the left is 2017. The image on the right is 2050. So if you run the numbers, the growth on the west side is about 250%. It goes from 127,000 to 430,000. And the growth in the southern portion is about 175%. So those are our challenges. How to serve all that growth.
I think it's been passed, yeah.
The good thing is, Utah County has a group of stakeholders and interested parties that are engaged and collaborative. So we've got that going for us. So I'm confident that we'll be able to. Wow. Some other challenges. Last summer was the summer of fires. It wasn't just in Region 3, but we had a couple significant ones. incidents that we dealt with. One was the Dollar Ridge fire that burned just east of Strawberry Reservoir, and it caused the closure of US 40, relocated or evacuated 2,000 people, burnt hundreds of structures. We lost 74 residents. That was an impactful fire. One of our employees was evacuated. We spent days managing detour routes and working with UHB on evacuation efforts and things like that. So that took a lot of effort from the maintenance crews, but they're happy to do it because they were serving their neighbors. So the other one that I'll highlight is the Coal Creek fire. And that, in combination with the Bald Mountain fire that threatened the communities of Elk Ridge and Woodland Hills, Covered Bridge, in the area in southern Utah County. That one, as we all are probably aware, that also caused thousands of people to be evacuated for quite a long time. And they finally got that fire under control. But what I want to tell you about is what happened shortly after that. There were some thunderstorms and high rain events that were forecasted, and there was a significant concern that the burn scar that was created in the fire would cause mudslides in Elk Ridge and Woodland Hills and the surrounding communities. And the call came out that they needed some barrier, and over the course of 17 hours working through the night, the maintenance crews in Region 3 moved 5,000 linear feet of barrier, 18 miles. So and you can see, it wasn't just our crews. That picture at the bottom is sandbags behind the barrier that was placed. The communities organized and filled, I don't know, tens of thousands of sandbags. I don't know how many they filled, but it was a tremendous amount. And everybody worked together to get those things in place. The mud flow did not come, luckily, but we were ready. A couple other improvements or challenges that our maintenance guys rose to meet. There was some leftover snow fencing material that was from a project, and they got creative and figured out how to install that. And that's actually working now on US 6 west of Eureka, and working well, I'm told. The US 6 guardrail and slope improvements is a narrow section of US 6 where guardrail was very close to the road on both sides because of slopes, and the maintenance shed came up with their own solution to widen out those slopes with some fill material that was adjacent to the location, and they were able to widen them sufficiently that the guardrail is not required, which is significant because that makes it a lot less likely that obstruction will get hit, and the side slopes are such that the vehicles can recover if they leave the road. So this kind of thing it's a nice safety enhancement, and I commend the crews for coming up with these kind of ideas on their own and pursuing them. One of the other challenges is the Provo Canyon avalanche that you probably recall was on January 17th. This was a controlled avalanche that our avalanche forecasters, they knew that the danger existed. We closed Provo Canyon to shoot the area, and a whole lot more snow came down than they expected. And covered the road with 30 feet of snow, about 200 feet wide. You can see in the picture, the middle one is from the side showing the snow coming out of the canyon. The one on the bottom shows it from across the river.
Wow.
But it was just a tremendous amount of snow, and the crews worked for 20 straight hours to clear that snow, almost 11,000 cubic yards. And I don't know if you've ever seen snow in an avalanche, but it's hard as a rock.
Wow.
I jumped up and down on a big piece, and I couldn't even get it to break. You know, it's just really difficult to deal with. But they jumped in and made it happen. So we weren't the only region that had to deal with an avalanche, but this was ours, and the guys did a great job.
Commissioner Evans was there in person, and
I didn't cause it.
he helped solve it, but
It was
congratulations.
amazing what that did, a little bit of snow to the big post guardrails, and it was just like toothpicks. It just exploded when that snow hit it. So powerful. And there's rocks in there and trees, and like you say, it's like concrete.
Yeah.
So.
Pretty eye-opening experience. Maybe the last thing to mention, Terry, when she was in Region 3, established these strategies, and we've continued them. We're focusing a lot of our attention on relationships and with stakeholders and partner agencies, and using these different approaches to tackling the problems that come up. And we're going to continue that vision with the goals in mind of being able to rise up and meet the challenges that I talked about earlier. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions from Rob?
A lot of good stuff.
Did a great job. Thank you. Thank you very much. Proud of region.
Yeah.
Proud of every region. Thank you. Great.
Thank you, Chairman, for the permission to kind of be able to stand up here for a few minutes and talk about Region 4's needs. So, Rick Torgerson, Udot Region 4 Director. So the southern part of the state, half of the state, it took 3 of them to talk about the top half here on the bottom. So we'll kind of go through the same slides as what Rob went through for Region 4. Just see a lot bigger numbers here up at the top, 1,700 miles of our high volume system. And where we're currently at with that, we're in very good shape and with our strategies for treating roadways on our high volume systems in Region 4. You can see that we're meeting the 60%. Looking out, it's starting to get close to the 5% goal, but we'll manage that in the next couple of years. Surface or high volume surface areas for Region 4, our goal is right about 720. So I didn't put that line on there, but it's right around in that area. So we're meeting that goal. One of the things that Carlos talked about was our Code 1. Our Code 1 plays a key role for Region 4 in both the high volume and the low volume sections. So we do treat both of those sections with quite a bit of our Code 1 money, as well as projects. Our sustainability index is hovering right around that 1, so it's a good sign for us as well. So it makes a good check between our surface areas and our sustainability index for high volume. Our low volume category, seeing great improvements here. We have 1,300 miles of low volume road in Region 4, so it's a daunting task to try to take care of that many low volume roads across the entire region. But the gas tax back in 2016 really helped us a lot. We were on a downward trend and doing everything we could with just basically chip seals on these 1,300 miles, just trying to keep them alive. And we have totally turned that dynamic around with the $26 million we give a year and been able to do some substantial improvements on some of these lower volume roads. I talked to Commissioner Tebs in Garfield County. We did about 40 miles of road on SR 12 around Escalante back towards Tropic, and just they're ecstatic about how that road is now from what it was before with a simple 1.5 inch overlay on that road and a little bit wider shoulders. But they're so pleased with the work that we've been able to do, and we've been able to put some good projects together that are covering, we got a couple this next year that are pushing 50 miles of paving down on 95 down in the San Juan County area. So some really long pavement jobs are able to come about because of this funding. We're hoping that this trend continues. Our estimates are showing that it'll flatten out, and that's mainly because of potential cost increases in the asphalt that we produce and put down on these roadways. But we are hoping we continue to keep this trend going and actually get above that 30% line in the future. So again, our surface volume, our goal for the low volumes is about 360. So in the 2020 year, we're not projected to come very close to that. It's real similar to what Rob says. Some of our treatments are getting on some of those roads, push that surface area. We can't cover as many surface areas on some of those. But by 2022, we actually are exceeding this. So it's a cyclic thing for us. If a road gets treated about every 10 years, So there's sometimes a group of roads, more of them are in that certain year of 2020, but they're not in the 2020 year, 2022 versus 2020. So we're trying to flatten those out so that we can balance our program out a little better so we don't have these peaks in treating our road services. Our sustainability index is relatively the same, you know, highs in a couple of years and hovering right around that one number over a 6-year period. So I'll move off from the pavement program and move into our transportation solutions. This is what we funded last year at the Transportation Solutions in the April workshop. About $3.75 million was funded through the commission for several projects, and we're well underway on every one of these projects. But I wanted to point out what we've been able to do and the power of the Transportation Solutions program for the region, both to cover our existing program and to bring new projects throughout the year. So the next two slides show what we were able to do throughout the year with help from the commission, and Kurt Thorne, our program manager, tries to deal with cost inflations on projects that we see. Like last month I talked to you a little bit about the challenge we've seen in Region 4 and some of the remote areas, just cost in HMA and SMA, our two asphalt products. We'd estimated them around $85 to $95 a ton, and they're currently being bid about $105 to $110. So it's, he's challenged heavily in trying to make all these projects that we had estimated around $90 a ton to coming in at $105. So you'll see a lot of these additional funding projects in here that he's adding through the commission action or at his the discretion the project managers have to add 2 projects to keep them alive to bid them. So there's a whole bunch of these. Some of them are small, some of them are a little bigger. Just last month brought this Hiawatha project to you guys for $2.7 million for approval. You see a lot of these adding project additional funds based mainly on that asphalt cost. And our second slide, again, the same type of thing. We did add a new project on I-15, or actually on the Southern Parkway from I-15 to the airport for $1.5 million. So about $4 million of this 9.6 is 2 new projects. The rest of it is dealing with our current program that we're working through to bid for this season. Our upcoming transportation solutions need, you'll see more of this over the next couple of months at the March and April workshop, and we have met with both Commissioner Zanotti and Commissioner Law, talked through some of these. This is an estimate of around $12 million. Our list is about $60 million right now in size, and that doesn't include all of our corridor study type projects for passing lanes. It's a very large list across the entire state. This is about $12 million. We'll finalize this list of projects when we get prepared for the April workshop coming up. But several of them are passing lane needs, especially the first one on SR 59. You guys heard a lot of comments during the STIP process, as well as the Springdale Commission meeting last year. We've done a great corridor analysis on there. Got the 2 mayors in Hilldale and Apple Valley, as well as Hurricane involved in the county, and have identified a really good $5 million project for passing lanes, one in each direction, and then an intersection improvement along that corridor. And in fact, it's just very interesting to see that we got a great email from the King County Commissioners when they heard about this, because I wasn't thinking, well, they're not really that much of a stakeholder, but they drive it all the time from King County all the way over to St. George, down through Arizona and around, and they sent a great email to us thanking us for the work that we're going to be doing this year for shoulder improvements, and then hoping that we can find money for these passing lane projects. But this transportation solution solves a wide range of projects for us, just not turn lanes. They deal with areas that they get beyond our code 1 or our maintenance force work, and it's difficult for our guys to kind of do that work. So like the parapet replacement near Beaver, we have 8 structures right inside of Beaver on I-15 that they're struggling. The rebar's starting to show on the parapets. They're the smaller parapets. Our attenuation coming up to it needs some help, and this $1.7 million project would come and take those parapets off, put a taller crash parapet on there with the freight mobility we have on I-15, and fix all the attenuation coming up there. So it's a $1.7 million job, and we feel like it's very, very much needed in the Beaver area. Then we get wildlife fencing, lighting, Fiber, we'd like to really push another fiber project on SR9, connect all the way, this would finish off the connection to Zions National Park all the way back into St. George and light that whole corridor up with fiber.
Great.
Turn lanes, culvert program, and some additional fence work. So it's a really wide range of projects that we get coming in from mainly our maintenance staff, what needs are out there. Then our contingency program, same thing, $1.5 million that the region director gets for contingency. These are all the partnerships that we've been able to work with all the locals. They give a wide range between studies, intersection improvements, curb and gutter, replacements, intersections, just a great funding source for us to work with the locals on. And then the second one is ones that we've done outside of local government participation. Some widening that we're looking to do on the northbound ramp in Cedar City, widening improvements at the Parowan, Paragon interchange, some investigation on landslides, some snow fence, rockfall mitigation. This is down in the drop off of Spotted Wolf, right down in the middle of Spotted Wolf, where we have some
On I-70.
On I-70 and go down to Beaver. Some areas where we're very concerned about the large rock that may come down, and we're going to go proactively take it down before it comes down on its own. And then we've been continuing our studies every year. I kind of show you kind of the corridors and some of the studies that we've been working with local governments on. We've done 3 this year. We're working on 3 this year. We got one in North Cedar out to Enoch. We're looking to try to solve the congestion and the additional traffic that's happening north of Cedar City. Salt Creek Canyon, this is a partnership with Region 3 this connects I-15 and Nephi through Salt Creek Canyon over into the Sanpete County area, where we've done a corridor vision with the locals and identified some project needs along that corridor, and then 2 new interchange studies in Washington County at the request of the Hurricane and St. George Mayor. Then we just approved today, thank you, the 2 Transportation Alternative Program projects. The Vale Shoulder Gap project is just a very needed project. After we completed the rehab of their bridge a couple of years ago, I think you were out there in the bucket truck.
Yes, I was.
So this will really complete a very popular loop in the Washington County area for the gun walk loops and then all the marathons and Ironmans and stuff. It'll be a very good improvement for $400,000. And some of the project highlights, I just want to highlight this guy right there, Mr. Danny McConkey, was helping celebrate the opening of the Springdale project.
Looking good.
That's a neat
Main
shot.
Street. I wish I could get all this out of here, just have Danny with the background there. It's just an amazing picture. Very successful project for us right through a very difficult construction period with the visitation in Zions and Springdale. And, thank you, Danny, for coming and helping.
It's really a nice project, too.
Very nice project.
For the records, I was out of country. I would have loved to be there.
Well, we got you on the next one. There you are.
Oh, okay.
The next one, and Danny was able to help us. This is our St. George Boulevard Sunset project that we opened. Total price tag around $45 million. Put a pedestrian underpass at the Sunset corner, as well as additional lanes in both directions. Very successful project in St. George for us as well.
Rick, are we getting the right kind of media? That's great stuff. Is that in the local papers?
Media, mainly the local media.
Yeah. There you go. That's terrific.
And there isn't a legislator from Washington County that hasn't made a point to come up to me and say, awesome job.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is the best of all layouts we made of it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It took a while to get there.
It's by far the best.
Yeah.
Good work.
People love it.
Yeah.
Another bigger project for us is if you go through Clear Creek Canyon, you go over these, there's 3 very large bridges in Clear Creek Canyon on I-70, and we're doing a major bridge preservation project where we're taking about half of the deck off, and with a hydrodynamic process, so it's a very high pressure water system that it takes off. You can see it in this picture here where they're hydrodynaming the deck, and then replacing that deck on 7 different bridges, I think, in Clear Creek Canyon. So we're halfway done this year. been a very successful project for us. It was just definitely needed time. We were struggling with quite a few potholes on those decks, and they're long decks, so it's a very great project for us. Several hot place recycle projects. We've talked a little bit about these in the past. We have cold and hot. This was 2 hot in place projects on 89 and 428, where we're recycling a lot of the material that's there and replacing the overlay on it. So this is going to slide in the north of Bay on 128 as you come up from the land. So a great set of projects for us using a new method. Well, it's not new, but it's we don't use it a ton here in Utah, but it's a unique process. And then we have I-15 climbing lanes through Leeds, where we connect with another section of climbing lanes. This is mainly northbound, where we connect from 22 all the way up to the 27 exit at Taylorsville. And you'll see this on the board next month. We do construction of the freeway section there. We'll also give you an update of the entire I-15 corridor in Washington County, where we're having 2 lanes, 3 lanes, and just kind of give you an update of what's going on I-15. Very challenging section for us into the future. And, you know, several of you have probably heard last week with President's Day again, we had some major traffic delays. I think Terry was actually in some, and Rob White was actually using some of the county roads to get around because we had about an hour delay from St. George to Cedar City again with the holiday traffic over the last week.
Wow.
So it's getting
Sunny
really,
St. George.
busy in the snow. I was talking to the Port of Entry, Kim Banks, manager, and we'll see some more numbers from him next week when I meet with him, but we're getting close to where the St. George port is one of the busier ports in Utah. And
because Perry is always historically been the busiest one.
he told me the other day that Perry, or the St. George just took over Perry. And I was like, I really want to see those numbers. So he's going to show them to me on Tuesday when I'm done with him. We had a really significant snowstorm the last couple of days in the St. George area, and I seen a video from the owner of Eagle Point Ski Resort that was going through, and all the trucks that were off the road trying to chain up. It's impressive, all the FedEx trucks and all the semis pulled over trying to chain up to get up the Black Ridge. It's something to see. There's a lot of semis going up. Actually, Connie, you came up there in that time and actually seen it yesterday morning, how bad it really was going on.
Terrible.
That storm. And that's in our 3-lane section too. So a very good project for us. And then we have, a lot of other little things that we do. We have a lot of rest areas we have to take up, barrier upgrades, passing lanes on SR9, big scour job we did way down at Sand Island Bridge, down by Mexican Hat. Just a ton of work that we do throughout the year just to preserve the system and keep it operational. And then some of our challenges, natural disasters. Rob talked a little bit about the fires. Luckily last year, Region 4 didn't have very many fires. We had a little connection with the Oak Creek one that Rob had, but we had the Bryan had one the year before. But we have these all the time that our guys don't get a lot of recognition for. We get major rock fall and they're out there, and in a couple hours the rocks are gone. A lot of people don't see that type of stuff. The Moki Dugway, we're having erosion on the Moki Dugway that has happened, and that is a road that you can see lying down there. If you've never driven the Moki Dugway, it's a very unique, non-paved state highway that we have to maintain. If you haven't been on it, I challenge you to go see it. It will scare people.
What was it, 3 years ago maybe?
We were there, yeah. We did it too.
That should be on everybody's bucket list.
Or not. Takes years off your life.
Or
We have some commissioners that still talk about our tour from 18 or 19 years ago in a school bus with no heat.
Oh my gosh.
So it's a very challenging stretch through there. We don't get a lot of snow, but when they do get snow, our guys like to try to snowplow. And I'm like, why are you doing that? Don't go up there and blade and try to snowplow. But they do. So we do have some urban growth going on, obviously, in Washington, Cedar City area, where we're challenged with some of this growth that's happening. Tourism visitation is the biggest thing that we're dealing with right now in the region. As population, in Utah doubles, and see all the population issues on the Wasatch Front. Well, we all want to recreate somewhere. It's all in southern Utah. So they can kind of bombard us at times, and it becomes a big challenge just for safety and mobility in the area. And then we run the ferry, which we'll get into.
Is that ferry still out of commission?
It's broke right now, yeah. So we're working to try to fix it, but we're also watching the water levels of the lake right now. If the water levels don't come up, it's going to be a real challenge for us to operate it this year. So we had, last year really dropped it a lot. We're hoping for a lot of That's it. Any questions?
Impressive. Just
Well,
a
well
lot
done.
to cover, you know, so much territory to cover.
I know I have asked this in the past from the other region directors, 1.5 million for the contingency fund. Is it enough still? You need more because every one of them
Right for us right now.
it is.
That's, yeah, we have about, like,
Right.
mentioned, we have
Lisa?
about $500,000 left to get us to. I think, Mr. Chairman, the ability to be able to, if something unusual happens, to be able to come back to the commission on
Right.
a monthly basis and make that request.
But it's impressive how many projects get done through the contingency fund, which is
They
good.
really help out our local communities as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Vic.
Good work, Rick.
That contingency fund is
And more and more tourists are coming.
Yeah.
No question about it.
Okay, item number 12, we have future projects discussions. Terry?
There's gonna give me an assist here for a second. Okay, thanks. So I'm just gonna pull up on our website to show you where the document is that I'm going to be referencing. Sorry, Carlos likes this when I take you all the way through, so I'm kind of rambling a little bit here. He likes me to show you where everything is, so if we go through strategic direction, and then I'm going to go over here to program briefing, and then I'm going to go into TIF and planning. And I'm going to show you something first. So one of the questions that gets asked by the regions as we lead up to STIP workshop is, what about Transportation Investment Fund? Are we going to be programming any projects? Now we, in the past, have programmed our projects out quite a ways, so we have not had substantial money that we were trying to program projects out into the future. But what we've usually done is prepared a list of some potential projects. And we had a list last year that has gotten outdated, so we have been in the process of updating that list and want to show you that list, show you where it's at. We aren't at this point planning to program new projects with the TIF funds when it comes to STIP workshop, but we want to show you what's on that list of upcoming things. So when we look at prioritization of our big capacity projects, we use the long-range plan as our place to get the project list from. And if you go on to the TIF and planning section here, I believe if I go to Unified Plan, it has a link to prioritization spreadsheet tables. I'm only showing you this for reference because this is 11 pages long. And then how do you take this list and figure out what you try to fund? This is the list of things that are eligible. And they all are scored. We have a very data-driven process that we work through. It's in 6 different categories of how we look at funding for these projects. You can't really go across categories and compare projects, so you really have to look at the scores within categories. So anyway, this is the exhaustive 11-page list. I just want you to see that it's there. We have updated this, looks like as of February 5th, 2019, we updated that list. But the list that I want you to look at is a list that is a little bit more abbreviated. Oops. Number 2. Okay, so this is the list that I want to talk about today. What this list represents are some of the projects that the regions have their, I'll look to everybody to nod and say yes. What the regions think is most important in their region is represented here. Things that score highly in our process are represented. Narrow that down into, well, it's an 11 by 17, so that's kind of cheating to say it's one page. So anyway, we tried to narrow that down to something a little bit more simplified to look at, but you can see that everything here is in order of how it scores. And I'm going to tell you that while it's a data-driven process, our scoring is not perfect. So sometimes it's not always going to represent everything, which is why we go back to the regions and say, what's most important to you guys? What are issues you're seeing? Local elected officials, what are you seeing? What's important to you, so that we can have, this sheet to me is a good discussion sheet. Allows us to have a data-based representation, but also represent kind of the feeling we're getting from the people who are using the facilities and from the regions who are really close to what's going on. So it's 6 categories here. I'm not going to go into detail over each one, but I want to let you know this is here. And that this, so we have it broken into the 6 categories: widen existing, new facilities, upgrade existing at-grade intersection, and it appears that Region 2 is the big winner in this category. Everything you see over to the side, we've got listed what region it's from. New interchanges on existing freeways, upgrade existing interchanges, passing lanes. We do have a section here on studies. These are just kind of things we see coming at us. These are a little bit easier to try to get funded. And then we've added this new section, and this one, you know, there's going to be a lot of input here. Why isn't this on it? Why isn't that on it? This list is out here for discussion. We can add to this list. It's just what are kind of our next priorities coming up, so we're not looking at 11 pages every time. So take a look at this. I had another comment I was going to make, and I just lost it.
If there's anything you think that should be on that list, let us know.
Yeah, what this does is allows you to kind of see where it ranks in terms of scoring, and then what we'd expect is if there's something that we're going to recommend that doesn't score as well as the others, it should have a good reason why we would be recommending it. So this just kind of gives you a little bit to think about, kind of puts a summary to what we're thinking about and what we're hearing, and lets you take a look at it and give you a chance to add to it. So.
So the ads have to come from that long-range plan that Terry showed you
Yes.
first.
Yes.
There's some really big numbers on there.
There are big, yes, there's
yes.
some really big numbers on here.
I
And you realize we're programmed out through 2024 right now.
Right.
I think we should share this with the newly elected legislators too, to know all the projects in the region.
That's why we have it on the website, and this is the tool we use with the legislators.
Yeah, we did previous, up until about 2 weeks ago, we had the old list from last year on there. As of this morning, Nate got this posted for me last minute, and we have it posted as of this morning. So that's why I kind of showed you the link to get to it, because we want people to be able to look at it. It really is a good place to start a discussion. And if there's something that's missing from it that you feel like needs to be there, we can add it to the list so people can see how it compares to some of the other things. And another part of this is we also are trying to look across the whole state, and so we're not just, everything isn't just data driven, although that is that's like kind of the main component you see on this sheet is how it scores, but it allows us to start to have those really good discussions. So that you guys hopefully are as informed as you need to be as we start to make decisions.
So the statute and the rule both indicate that, you know, the commission doesn't have to go straight down by number, by rank, but you have to state why you might have jumped over a project in a public meeting.
Does the Canyon Accord fit into this discussion at all?
Does the what?
The Canyon Accord, or is
Mountain Accord?
Mountain Accord?
So Mountain Accord doesn't really exist anymore, so now it's
okay.
It's efforts that we're really leading this, working in partnership with what's now called the Central Wasatch Commission.
Okay.
You guys funded as part of the recreation money, because again, those projects in the canyon would really not rank well here. So that's why President Niederhauser last year established a $100 million recreation hotspot program that you guys have the fun of deciding how to allocate. I haven't seen that much attempt at informing the commission in a while around the state. So we have, I think it's $67 million allocated for Little Cottonwood Canyon solutions there now, and we're doing environmental documents on that.
So if I may, just one more thing to just give you a heads up on while I have an opportunity here. I'm going to scroll down here to passing lanes, and the first project we have in there under passing lanes that scores the highest. We are currently going after some infra grants. And typically we do that, we try to match money we have already programmed and try to leverage it to get some federal dollars. We usually have done that with something, again, that's already programmed. We are proposing to go after an infra grant for this US 40 project. We think it describes really well, with some of the requirements being, they're trying to spend, I believe, half of the money in rural areas. We think this is a good rural project. It involves bringing oil from the basin because we have trouble with the trucks trying to accelerate up the hill. It also connects to a MIDA project where there's money from the SIB involved. The federal government right now is liking to see projects that have public-private partnership in them, so private money, public money, that you're leveraging many things together to stretch your dollars further. So we think this is a really, the commission being supportive of programming a project for the matching money should we be successful with the grant. Now, if you're not, we can always pull the grant back. But we do have a submittal deadline, and this one the timing kind of got away from us, so we thought we'd tell you kind of as an informational item that we are pursuing the grant, that we will submit it with an assumed match to it, but that we can pull that back if we need to, if it's not something that you want us to pursue.
How much is the grant?
Oh, shoot, I should have had that up. I believe we're in the neighborhood of 40 to 45 million when we add all the pieces together. And then we were trying to play with the dollar amounts a little bit and try to figure out what's the right amount to use as a match to give us a good submittal, because they are looking for those matches to be higher than they used to.
So we're looking at about 10 to 12 million potential from the grant, and that our match would be about 55% of the total. So we're looking at possibly having to come up with $15 million of state money to do that. So our goal is never to put the commission in the corner. The deadline got away from us. This project looks like it'll compete well, and it takes a long time to put these things together. So we're going to proceed, but if it's not something the commission wants to do, we fully respect that. In the future, what you'll see is a much more ongoing conversation about the status of grants we've applied for, as well as any new grant opportunities that come up, a discussion with the commission on which ones you would like us to pursue. At the end of the day, we've been pursuing projects you've already programmed, and then what we do is if we get the grant, we pull the money off that project, and you can reallocate it to other projects. We want to be a little more proactive with the commission on this. So that's the process Terry's going to be trying to put together.
Yeah, and what we'd like to do is potentially have kind of a dashboard of all the grants that are in process. And I called each one of you to introduce Ben Hewitt as our new program director, and he's going to be responsible for that. So I can come up with all kinds of things that would be great for us to show you, because then I can assign it off to Ben.
Why don't you indicate which divisions he's responsible for?
Ben is going to be working with planning, environmental, strategic investments, and programming.
Great.
Nothing big on his plate.
So the buck stops with Ben.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Terry.
No questions?
Lots of work. Thank you.
It's nice to know where I can go see it on the website.
Yeah. Shane wishes he were here, I'm sure. So.
I'm sure he would be jealous.
Yes, he will be. Next commission meeting is on the March 21st and 2nd in Santa Clara, in sunny St. George area.
You guarantee that?
Guarantee that. Last time we had the rain and the snow, so.
Yes, we did.
Have a flag next time.
So at this time, I would like to have entertain a motion to close this public hearing and go to the closed session.
So we.
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Commissioner?
Yes.
This is an item I had, and just to make
Charles?
sure.
You will have to wait.
Wait, right?
I want to make sure we're complying with the Open and Public Meetings Act.
Okay, go ahead.
The reason that we would ask that we go into closed session is to discuss strategy. Typically, I understand that each commissioner is required to state their name and their vote to go into closed session.
Yeah, that's correct.
I would like to make sure we do that properly.
Commissioner Kramer, before you leave, you have to state your name, full name.
Well, he's not
Your
going to be
vote.
here.
He won't be here for it.
Oh, you. Nagi Zinadi, yes.
Daniel County, yes.
Guanawa, yes.
Yeah, that is correct. My other boards I chair, you need to do that.